I remember the mornings when London felt almost tender, the fog low, the lamplight pale, and the streets still holding the night's last breath. I would pass the milk vendors at dawn, their carts lined with little glass bottles, each filled with a pale, silky liquid that seemed innocent enough. But even from a distance, I could smell it, the sweet, earthy whisper of poppy resin, stirred quietly into warm morning milk. It was meant to soothe nerves, to soften worry, to hush the tremors that lived beneath the surface of polite society. And yet, it did something far darker. People rarely spoke of it directly. They called it sleeping milk, or the gentle draught, and mothers slipped it into their own cups long before they'd dare give it to a child. I still hear the clink of those bottles when I think about it, delicate, almost holy, hiding a hunger no one wanted to name. Subscribe and stay with me. This city has more alleys to slip into, more quiet cups to uncover, and more addictions whispered behind closed doors. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? The past is never as distant as it seems, because this is where the story begins, in a city wrapped in fog and secrets, where even comfort came with a price. London learned to drink its calm from a flower, and the consequences seeped through its homes, its streets, and the trembling hearts of those who believed the milky sweetness could save them. Tonight, we follow the trail of that gentle poison. The morning begins before you do, long before you open your eyes, before the lamps are trimmed, before London decides whether it wants to cough itself awake or stay wrapped in fog. The street outside is already moving. You hear it first as a faint clatter, a gentle trembling against the cobblestones, the kind of sound that slips into your dreams and pulls you slowly toward the world again. Bishopsgate is still more shadow than street, its edges blurring into the cold, but the milk cart knows the way by memory alone. When you step outside, breath folding into the pale air, the cart is already there, wooden wheels creaking softly, horse stamping a rhythm into the quiet. Bottles glint in the faintest hint of dawn, each one swaddled in cloth to keep the warmth in. The milkman doesn't speak at first. He barely looks up from his ledger, but you can smell it, warm milk laced with something sweet and earthy, a scent that doesn't belong to any barn or pasture. It hovers around the cart like a secret. You walk closer, boots pressing into the thin sheen of frost that never seems to melt this early. The milkman gives you a nod, the kind London tradespeople give when they're awake before reason tells them they should be. He lifts one bottle, holding it as though it's fragile, holy even. Steam drifts from beneath the cork. You watch it curl upward, soft and white, almost tender, the kind of steam that promises comfort if you let it. He tells you, quietly, as if sharing a confession, that the mothers on Bishopsgate want their bottles warmed now. Helps with nerves, he mutters, though he doesn't meet your eyes. You know what he means. You've seen the women on their stoops, fingers trembling as they wait. You've seen how quickly the tremor stops after that first sip. The milkman didn't make this idea himself. He only follows demand, follows the soft knock at his door each morning long before sunrise. You wonder if he realizes his cart carries something more than milk. You lean in a little, pretending to adjust your glove, but really, you're looking at the faint residue inside the bottles. A pale swirl of something heavier than cream clings to the glass. Poppy resin. Not enough to frighten anyone, just enough to soften them, enough to turn a restless night into a gentle drift, enough to keep the city quiet. The street is still so silent you can hear the horse breathing. Each exhale fogs the air in front of it, rising and disappearing like the memories of last night's thoughts. Somewhere far behind the buildings, a church bell rolls once low, uneasy. Bishopsgate has always been awake before the rest of London, but this kind of morning feels different, slower, too soft at the edges. You feel it pressing around you, a heaviness disguised as calm. The milkman hands you a bottle, warm against your palm. For a moment, you imagine taking it inside, letting the heat settle in your chest, letting the sweetness quiet the ever-present ache behind your ribs. You understand why people ask for it. You understand why they don't question it. The city is tired, Everyone is tired. As the cart pulls away, wheels whispering against stone, you stand alone in the thinning fog, the warm bottle cooling slowly in your hands, and you realize the truth settling into Bishopsgate long before anyone dares to say it. London is learning to depend on the comfort that waits in these bottles, and this morning, like every morning, is only the beginning. The kettle begins to sing before the sun has properly risen, its voice thin and shrill in the small upstairs kitchen. You rub your hands together over the stove's weak flame, feeling the heat only in brief flickers, as if the fire itself is reluctant to wake. Outside, Bishopsgate is still wrapped in blue-grey quiet, but here, in this cramped room, another ritual is already unfolding, one far softer, far more dangerous than the clatter of milk carts below. You reach for the spoon first. It rests exactly where you left it the night before, its bowl stained with a faint amber shadow that never quite washes away. The tin canister beside it gives off a smell the moment you lift the lid, earthy, warm, strangely floral. Not unpleasant, not alarming, just comforting. You tap the spoon inside, watching the fine poppy powder gather, light as dust, tender as breath. You tell yourself it's only a pinch, only enough to ease the mind, only enough to smooth the jagged edges that life in this city carves into you little by little. The mothers who crowd Bishopsgate at dawn say the same thing. The milkman hears it every morning. Just a little extra today. It helps me sleep. It keeps the sadness away. You've heard those lines so many times they have begun to sound like prayers. The kettle hisses louder. You pour the hot milk into a cup, watching the steam rise and fade in the cold air. When the powder touches the liquid, it blooms swirling, sinking, dissolving into thin, dreamy layers. For a moment, it looks like a tiny storm captured inside porcelain. You stir slowly, letting the warmth climb past your fingers, up your wrists, into the thin sleeves of your nightdress. Even without tasting it, you feel the relief begin. Your hands don't shake as much these days, or perhaps they do, and you simply no longer notice. That's the strange thing about the mixture. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't warn. It only softens. First the nerves, then the questions, then the hours themselves. It takes away everything sharp enough to hurt, and then, in time, everything sharp enough to remember. You carry the cup toward the bedroom. The hallway is dim, the wallpaper peeling in small secret curls. Footsteps creak somewhere below, a neighbor moving too slowly for morning, or perhaps too quickly. Everyone is out of rhythm lately, too calm, too sleepy. The city feels as though it is wrapped in a single long exhale. You sit on the edge of the bed. The cup warms your palms. Outside, the milk cart wheels clatter faintly, marking the minutes as they pass. You lift the cup and take the first sip. It is sweet, almost buttery. The resin settles over your tongue like velvet. You close your eyes, and the room seems to tilt gently, as though the world has loosened its grip on you. Another sip, then another. The ache behind your temples eases. The unsettled thoughts shrink back into their corners. Somewhere in your chest, a tightness you've carried for months unwinds itself, thread by thread. But as the warmth spreads, you feel something else, a small pang, a flicker of fear so faint it barely stays long enough to name. You set the cup down. You breathe. The sweetness lingers in your throat, stubborn and soft. You tell yourself it's fine. You've told yourself that many times before. Downstairs, the street is beginning to stir. Doors open, carts move, voices rise like pale birds into the air, and while you sit in the dim quiet, the spoon still resting on the kitchen table, the truth settles just out of reach. You didn't drink the milk to sleep. You drank it so you wouldn't have to feel anything at all. The bell over the apothecary door barely makes a sound when you enter, just a small metallic tremor, as if even it is reluctant to disturb the air inside. The shop is dim, lit only by 3 oil lamps, placed so carefully you suspect they've been burning since before dawn. Dust drifts lazily through the golden light, settling on glass bottles arranged in neat, fearful rows. Everything here feels precise, intentional, quiet. You pull your coat tighter around you. The door closes behind you with a hush. The city's cold stays outside, but something colder lingers inside, not in temperature, but in the careful way the apothecary watches you as you step in. He is a thin man with eyes that seem always half tired, half knowing. He stands behind the counter with a cloth folded over his arm, polishing a jar that doesn't need polishing. He greets you in a low voice, as though anything louder might wake the bottles from sleep. You clear your throat before speaking. The words feel heavier than you expected. "I need more," you whisper. He nods. Not with surprise, he has heard this 100 times already today, but with a sort of weary resignation. He turns toward the shelves behind him, fingertips brushing labels written in slanted ink. Sal volatile, spirits of lavender, paregoric, rhubarb cordial. And there, tucked almost shyly between them, the small, unmarked jar of finely ground poppy resin. No label, no instructions, just an understanding passed from hand to hand like an inherited sin. He places the jar gently before you. "You're not meant to take too much," he murmurs, eyes flicking toward the narrow window where the morning fog presses its face against the glass. "It's strong, stronger than milk should carry. You know that. Everyone knows. But no one speaks the truth of it outright. Instead, London wraps it in softer names: the draught, the comfort, the mother's helper, and the apothecary, whether he likes it or not, has become its keeper. He weighs the resin on his brass scale, the faint scratch of metal on metal sounding impossibly loud in the silence. You watch the powder gather like a small, controlled storm, pale and fragrant, innocent if you didn't know better. When he pours it into the paper fold, you notice the faint tremor in his hands. Not from cold, the room is warm, but from something inside him, something he, too, has tasted. The softness in his eyes tells you he understands exactly what he is selling, exactly who he is enabling. But the apothecary trade leaves little room for judgment, only for quiet transactions and quieter consequences. You place your coin on the counter. He does not reach for it right away. "Be careful," he says at last. Words spoken like a confession, or a warning too late to matter. You slip the packet into your pocket, feeling the weight of it settle like a heartbeat. The apothecary returns to polishing his jars. The lamps flicker. A floorboard creaks somewhere. Deeper inside the shop, perhaps, another customer waiting to be brave enough to ask. When you step outside, the fog swallows you whole. Bishopsgate stretches out before you, blurred at the edges like a memory you're already beginning to lose. You close your fingers around the packet, feeling its fragile softness. You tell yourself this is the last time, but the truth is simpler, quieter, and far closer than you'd like to admit. London is full of whispers now, and the apothecaries know them all. You notice it by accident at first, the small, delicate smile that settles on your lips without permission. It happens in the early afternoon, when the sun lies low and sickly behind the London haze, and the streets hum with the weary rhythm of footsteps and carriage wheels. You're sitting near the kitchen window, mending a tear in your sleeve, when the warmth begins its slow rise through your body. A soft glow, a loosening, a feeling almost like remembering something pleasant from a long time ago. You stop stitching, the thread sags between your fingers, and then the smile. It is not wide or jubilant. It is not even intentional. It is simply there, blooming faintly like a flower pressed inside an old book. A moment of quiet relief in a city that rarely gives any. You touch your cheek with your fingertips, as though surprised that the expression belongs to you. The room around you changes when it happens. The walls seem less tired. The floorboards breathe a little easier. The cold draft creeping under the door softens into something bearable. Even the ticking clock on the mantel slows its impatient tapping. It feels as though the world itself has paused to let you rest, to let you breathe, to let you feel better. You know, of course, why this is happening. The poppy resin you stirred into your morning milk now moves gently through your veins like lullabies drifting down a dim hallway. It does not rush. It does not demand. It wraps you in a calm so serene you almost forget the anxious flutter that usually lives in your chest. Downstairs, you hear laughter, thin, distant, floating up from the landlady's parlor. Someone must have taken their morning draft early. You imagine them sitting in a rocking chair near the fire, eyes half-lidded, fingers relaxed, their worries dissolving one grain at a time. That same ease now settles over you, warm as a hand placed gently on your shoulder. But then something else happens. Your needle slips from your grasp. You watch it fall, silently, tip first against the wood. You mean to bend down and pick it up. Truly, you do. But your limbs feel heavy, as though wrapped in wool. Not unpleasant, just slower, softer. The smile remains, but it shifts, becomes thinner, a little dazed, as though someone else painted it onto your face. You lean back in your chair, the fabric slips from your lap, the light from the window blurs at the edges. You blink once, twice, each time slower. For a moment, panic tries to surface. A cold thought, this isn't normal, but the warmth smothers it before it can fully rise. Outside, Bishopsgate continues its restless march. But inside this room, nothing moves except your breathing. You sit there, held in that calm, suspended between waking and dreaming, and that faint smile, that quiet, gentle curve you never meant to make feels like the city whispering to you, telling you everything is fine, everything is easy, everything is soft. You close your eyes for a moment, just a moment, and when you open them again, the needle is still on the floor, the thread tangled by your shoes, and the smile has not left your face. Not yet. You hear them before you see them, the soft murmur of women gathering at the corner where Milk Lane meets Bishopsgate, their voices hushed as though they're sharing secrets the fog might overhear. The morning is damp and pale, the kind that clings to your eyelashes and settles into your sleeves. You pull your shawl tight and step onto the street, drawn by the familiar sound of glass bottles touching, soft as wind chimes. Milk Lane has always had its own rhythm. Even when the rest of the city is still deciding whether to wake, this narrow stretch hums quietly with footsteps and whispered greetings. The women arrive bundled in shawls, faces tired but hopeful, each carrying a small coin purse and a longing they don't dare name aloud. You join them almost automatically. You've been doing so for weeks. The milkman stands at the far end of the lane, his cart positioned beneath the sagging awning of an old tailor's shop. He moves with the steady calm of someone resigned to the weight of his own business. Bottle after bottle is lifted, checked for warmth, and passed into waiting hands. The steam rises like blurred halos around every woman who steps forward. When your turn comes, he doesn't ask what you want. He only nods. He already knows. You hand him the coin. He gives you the bottle. The exchange is nearly silent, but the understanding between you feels louder than words. The women gather close by the stone wall, sharing space if not conversation. You recognize them, the butcher's wife who never sleeps, the seamstress with hollows beneath her eyes, the young mother who lost a child last winter and hasn't walked with purpose since. Each one holds her bottle as though it's something sacred. Someone sighs deeply. Someone else wipes her cheek. Another woman closes her eyes and lifts the bottle to her lips, taking a trembling sip right there on the street. No one judges her. No one even looks surprised. You watch them, realizing that this is not just a habit, it is a small salvation, a moment stolen from the harshness of the day. Each woman holding onto her cup like a fragile shield against the darkness pressing in on her life. The conversations come in fragments, drifting like threads through the fog. I only slept 2 hours before this. It stills my heart. Just long enough. The baby cried all night. I couldn't breathe until I had a drop. It's the only thing that keeps me steady. No one mentions the poppy resin openly. They don't have to. Everyone here knows. Everyone pretends not to. You raise your own bottle, feeling the warmth seep into your palm. You're careful not to drink it, yet not here, not in front of others, but the smell alone calms something inside you. Sweet, earthy, gentle, too gentle. The fog thickens, wrapping Milk Lane in a muted embrace. The women disperse slowly, drifting back to their homes, like ghosts returning to their resting places. Each carries her warmth with her. Each carries her secret. You linger a moment longer, your breath clouding in the cold air. The bottle feels heavier now, not physically, but in meaning a weight against the emptiness you've been trying to ignore. When you finally turn to leave, you realize something unsettling. Milk Lane is no longer just a place. It is a ritual, a refuge, a dependency shared by women who have nowhere else to place their hurt. And as you walk home with the warm bottle held close to your chest, you understand you are becoming one of them. The tavern is still half asleep when you push open the door, its hinges groaning as though protesting the interruption. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of last night's ale, sour, stale, soaked into the wooden beams like a memory that refuses to fade. The lamps burn low, their flames flickering in uneven breaths, casting long shadows over the men slumped at tables. This is the hour before the noise returns, before the shouting, before the laughter, before the world forgets itself again. You step inside quietly. You know who you're here to see. They sit near the back dock workers, porters, wharf hands with calloused palms and shoulders worn down by years of lifting more than any man should. They are men built for labor, shaped by tides and ropes and cold mornings. But lately, their faces are softer, their eyes glazed, their movements slow, almost graceful, as though the world has become too heavy to grip with bare hands. A bowl of warm milk sits on the table between them. Not ale, not gin, milk. And even from across the room, you can smell what it carries. Poppy, strong, sweet, unmistakable. One of the men lifts the bowl to his lips, tilting it back in long, practiced swallows. His hands do not tremble like they used to. Weeks ago, you saw him unable to lift a crate without shaking violently, exhaustion rattling through every bone. But now, his fingers steady, his breath level, his expression serene in a way that feels wrong on a man who once roared through the nights. Another man laughs a quiet, dreamy sound. "Better than a pint," he murmurs. The others nod, slow and content. You pull up a chair without asking, settling into the dimness beside them. The tavern keeper eyes you briefly from behind the counter but says nothing. He has seen too much to be surprised by anything now. He knows how many men arrive shaking and leave floating. A cup is pushed toward you half full, thin curls of steam rising from it like tiny white ghosts. "Have some," a man says softly, almost shyly. It takes the edge off. You wrap your fingers around the warm ceramic. The heat seeps into your skin. The scent rises earthy, soothing, familiar. You do not drink, not yet. But the men watch you with the gentle expectation of those who have already surrendered. One begins to speak. He tells you how he began, with just a sip, just to sleep, after a long shift. Another explains how the nightmares stopped. A third admits he now drinks it even on good days, because the quiet it brings feels too precious to lose. As they talk, you notice something underneath their calm, something hidden in the slowness of their blinking, the softness of their words, an absence. These men who once lived by instinct, alert, sharp, aware, now drift through their hours as though walking underwater. Their exhaustion hasn't left them. It has only been smothered, muffled beneath a blanket of milky dreams. The tavern grows lighter as dawn inches through the windows. A faint golden glow touches their faces, highlighting the strange peace carved into them. They sip again and again, hands steady, voices gentle, lives slowly slipping into something too smooth to be real. You place the untouched cup back on the table. You stand. You watch them lean into their bowls like men warming their hands over a dying fire. And you leave with the unsettling truth lingering behind you. London's strongest men are learning to sleep while awake, and it is the milk, not the silence, that is lulling them under. The house is quiet when you arrive, too quiet. Even the floorboards seem to hold their breath. The usual morning creaks and murmurs replaced by a stillness that feels heavy, unnatural. You knock softly on the doorframe of the small nursery, calling the mother's name. But she doesn't answer at first. Her voice finally reaches you from inside, thin and trembling. "In here, please." You step inside, your eyes adjusting to the dim amber light filtering through the curtains. The nursery is warm, almost stiflingly so, the air thick with the faint scent of milk left too long on a bedside table. Dolls stare from shelves, their painted eyes glossy in the half-light. But it is the crib in the corner that draws you, not because of movement, but because of the complete, unbroken stillness around it. The mother sits beside it, wringing her hands in her lap, her shawl slipping from her shoulders. Her hair is undone, her eyes red-rimmed. She looks as though she hasn't slept, though the child before her, impossibly, unnervingly sleeps too deeply for both of them. "I only gave him half a spoon," she whispers, her voice cracking like thin ice, "just to help him settle. He was crying so much. He wouldn't stop. I only thought." Her words fade into the warm, oppressive air. You move closer to the crib. The baby lies wrapped in a soft blanket, cheeks flushed a faint rose. His breathing is slow, too slow. Each rise of his tiny chest takes longer than the last, as though his body must remember each breath before taking it. You place a hand gently near his face. His skin feels warm, damp with sleep, not the natural sleep of an infant, soft and restless, but a deeper, heavier quiet, a stillness far beyond his years. The mother watches you, her fingers trembling violently now. "He's been like this since dawn. I thought he'd wake by now." You do not answer immediately. The truth catches in your throat. You have seen grown men softened to stupors by poppy milk, women lulled into dreamy silences, but seeing it here in a crib feels like witnessing something sacred broken. "How much did he drink?" you ask gently. She shakes her head, tears spilling. "I don't know," he was screaming, and the milkman said everyone's using it. Just a little in the bottle, just a touch. She reaches for the child's hand, brushing it with the lightest touch. He does not stir. Outside, Bishopsgate bustles faintly through the window, muffled footsteps, distant carts, the quiet machinery of the morning. But here, in this suffocating warmth, time has curled inward. You lift the baby carefully, supporting his head. He is limp, his limbs soft, his eyelids fluttering as though dreaming far, far away. A chill creeps up your spine. "He needs air," you murmur. "He needs the cold to wake him." You move toward the window, cradling him, letting a thin blade of winter air brush across his cheeks. For a moment, a terrifying moment, nothing changes. His breathing remains slow, shallow. Then, a tiny gasp. His fingers twitch. His brow furrows softly, weakly. The mother collapses into her hands, sobbing with relief. But you feel no relief, only dread. Because you know, and now she knows, that this is not the last time. The poppy has already touched their home, and once it enters a household, it rarely leaves without taking something. As you hand the baby back, his eyes fluttering open then closed again, you realize the truth settling like fog inside your chest. London's addiction is not contained to kitchens and taverns. It is reaching into cradles now, and the smallest hearts are sleeping the heaviest. You find him at the edge of Bishopsgate, just after sunrise, standing beside his cart as though he has been rooted there since the night before. His shoulders are hunched beneath a wool coat too thin for the cold, and a faint sheen of frost clings to the brim of his cap. The horse beside him stamps impatiently, breath rising in cloudy plumes, but the milkman himself does not move, not until he sees you. Then he gives a smile, small, tight, knowing. "You're early today," he murmurs, voice low enough that only you can hear. You step closer. The street behind you blurs into the soft rumble of morning wheels and muted footsteps. But here, beside the cart, the world feels oddly still. Bottles line the shelves in tidy rows, their surfaces fogged from the warmth inside. Each one holds the same pale, velvety swirl. Each one glows faintly, as if holding its own private dawn. He watches your gaze linger on them. People want it warmer now, he says. Winter's colder this year. Folks need comfort. He pauses, then adds in a quieter tone. More than milk can give on its own. There is no accusation in his voice. Only resignation, a tired acceptance of what he has become. You realize, standing there in the thin chill, that he knows far more than he lets on. You have seen him measure resin with a precision that betrays familiarity. You have seen him adjust doses depending on who stands before him. A struggling mother receives a stronger bottle. A trembling man gets one gentler, but still laced with a softness that is not natural. The milkman lifts a bottle now, cradling it between his palms like a fragile candle. They say it's harmless, he continues, just enough to soothe the nerves, just enough to sleep. His eyes flick toward the misted rooftops. But the city's sleeping too deeply now, too long. You sense he wants to say more, but fear presses against his throat. His fingers move restlessly over the cork, tightening and loosening it. I've stopped asking where they get it, he says at last. The powder, I used to ask, but the answers were never honest. He meets your eyes, so I stopped asking. Behind him, a woman approaches the cart, shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. Her face is pale, lips trembling. She hands over her coin with desperation in her eyes. The milkman gives her a bottle without a word. When she walks away, her steps steady almost immediately. You watch him watch her leave. She used to buy bread in the mornings, he murmurs. Now she doesn't bother with food. Only this. His voice cracks on the last word, barely audible over the rattle of a passing carriage. You step closer, lowering your voice. You could stop selling it. He lets out a hollow laugh, the kind that sounds older than he is. And lose my livelihood? These bottles feed my family, pay my rent, keep a roof over my head. He hesitates, then whispers, and if I stop, they'll find another vendor, one with less conscience. He grips the edge of the cart as though steadying himself. The city wants this, he says, needs this. I am just the one handing it over. A silence settles between you, heavy, weary, tinged with something like sorrow. Behind you, Bishopsgate stirs with the sounds of waking life. But here, by the cart, the air feels thick with unspoken truths. You take your bottle finally. Its warmth seeps into your skin. The milkman exhales, long and slow, as though releasing a burden he cannot set down. As you walk away, you glance back once. He is still there, still watching, still knowing exactly what he's doing and exactly what he cannot stop. And in that moment, it becomes clear. The addiction gripping London's heart is not fueled by greed or ignorance alone. It is fed by the people who know too much and cannot afford to know any less. You notice it the moment you step inside the boarding house. The air feels thicker than it should, warm, sweet, and faintly floral, as though someone has boiled milk and poppies together in a single pot and let the scent cling to the walls. The staircase groans under your feet as you climb, each step pulling you deeper into a quiet that is not peaceful, but drowsy, the kind of quiet that settles over places where too many people sleep when they shouldn't. At the landing, the hallway stretches out like a dim tunnel. The wallpaper is faded, curling at the edges. Gas lamps flicker weakly along the walls, their flames wobbling as though they, too, want to sink into rest. You hear no voices, no footsteps, not even the usual coughs of the sick or mutterings of the restless. Only the soft, labored breathing of a building that has taken on the habits of its occupants. You knock gently on the nearest door. No answer. You knock again. Still nothing. You press your ear to the wood. Only silence. Slowly, you push the door open. Inside, bodies lie draped over chairs, curled on sagging mattresses, slumped by the fireplace, where the embers glow faintly, too faintly. Men and women who should be awake preparing meals, dressing for work, bustling down Bishopsgate to catch the morning's trade now rest in unnatural stillness. Their chests rise and fall in slow, syrupy breaths. Their eyelids flutter occasionally, as though caught in dreams they cannot escape or fully wake from. On the table, a line of bottles stands like soldiers abandoned mid-formation. some empty, some half full, each one clouded with the milky residue of poppy-laced warmth. A few spoons rest beside them, their bowls stained with a pale amber sheen. The room reeks of sweetness, a sweetness so powerful it turns your stomach, and yet, beneath it, something sour lurks, the scent of bodies unmoved too long. You move among them, whispering their names, trying to rouse them. A woman stirs faintly, her fingers twitching. Her lips part as though to speak, but only a shallow sigh escapes. Her head lolls to the side, eyes rolling beneath closed lids. Another man whom you've seen carrying crates for the butcher sits slumped against the wall, breathing through his mouth, breath tinged with the floral musk of resin. The fireplace crackles softly, the only living sound in the room. You touch one man's shoulder. His skin is warm, too warm, his pulse slow, too slow. A sudden dread coils in your chest. You glance toward the window. The glass is fogged from the heat of so many sleeping bodies, droplets running down like tears. The room feels suffocating, thick with the exhalations of people buried under their own dreams. You open the window slightly, letting a sliver of cold air slip inside. It cuts through the sweetness like a sharp blade. A few of the sleepers shift, but none wake. The landlady appears in the doorway behind you, her face pale, her hair messy from a restless night. "It started with one," she whispers. Then she points toward the table of bottles. "Now it's the whole floor." Her voice breaks as she clutches the doorframe. "I can't wake them. None of them." You look around the room again, at the still bodies, the quiet breaths, the warm haze floating in the air like a drugged fog, and feel the truth settling over you like a shroud. These rooms are no longer living spaces. They are nests of sleep, sanctuaries of sedation. And London, under the soft glow of dawn, does not realize that entire households are drifting into dreams from which they no longer care to return. Night settles over London like a thick wool blanket, muffling the clatter of carriage wheels and the restless murmurs drifting through Bishopsgate's narrow lanes. You sit alone in your small room, a single candle flickering on the bedside table, its flame bending toward the drafts that push under the door. For once, the ache in your chest, the one that always tightens when the sun goes down, feels quieter, as though the darkness itself is holding you gently instead of pressing against your ribs. You lift the warm cup in your hands. Steam curls upward in delicate ribbons, carrying with it the scent you've come to know so well. Soft milk, sweet resin, a hint of something floral and warm that settles in the back of your throat before you even taste it. The city outside creaks with its own exhaustion. But here, in this thin slice of stillness, there is something almost tender in the air, something promising. You take a sip. The warmth begins at the back of your tongue, spreading slowly, curling downward like a soft wave rolling across your chest. The pain, that tight, invisible hand squeezing your heart each night, loosens, just a little, then a little more. Your shoulders sink, your breath deepens. A calm you couldn't find in prayer, sleep, or human company now drips into your veins like melted gold. Another sip, slower this time. The candlelight blurs at the edges. The shadows soften into gentle shapes, no longer sharp or menacing. You lean back against the wall, letting the plaster press coolly against your spine. For the first time in what feels like months, you do not notice the anxiety humming beneath your skin. You do not feel the sting of old memories clawing up your throat. You do not feel the emptiness that usually sits heavy on your sternum when the night grows too quiet. Instead, nothing. A blessed, floating nothing. You close your eyes and feel yourself lifting, drifting, untethered. Thoughts become liquid, slipping through your fingers before you can hold on to them. Your limbs grow softer, heavier. The cup slips from your hand just slightly, and you barely manage to steady it before it spills. But even that doesn't alarm you. Nothing alarms you. You drink again. Your mind, usually so loud in the silence, settles into a quiet hum. The grief that creeps in during the lonely hours, the grief you never talk about, the one that hides behind your stern mask each day, dissolves, as though it never existed at all. Every sharp corner inside you turns round and smooth. Your heartbeat slows to a steady, drowsy rhythm, like footsteps walking away down a long hall. For the first time in your life, you understand why people return to this cup, why they gather in Milk Lane before dawn, why mothers hush their children with tinctured bottles, why men in taverns laugh with soft, sleepy eyes, why entire rooms fall under this spell, because pain is a constant companion in this city, and this warm, drifting, golden quiet is the first thing that has ever sent it away. When the candle finally gutters, leaving you in darkness, you do not feel fear. You do not feel anything at all. You just breathe, slow and easy, and without realizing it, you whisper into the dark. So this is what it feels like to live one night without pain. The change comes slowly at first, so slowly that you almost miss it. It begins with the evenings, those soft grey hours when London usually hums like a restless creature, children calling to one another from stoops, merchants closing up shop with loud metal shutters, lamplighters tapping their poles against glass. You used to hear it all, the clatter, the laughter, the arguments that spilled into the streets like warm ale. But now the evenings fold differently. You step outside one night just after twilight, expecting the usual bustle, the murmur of bodies and breath, the city shaking off the day's grit. Instead, the street feels strangely hollow. Sound disappears quicker than it should, swallowed whole by the fog drifting down from Bishopsgate. A faint glow flickers behind shutters, but no silhouettes move past the windows. The lamps burn their amber halos over empty pavement. You walk down the lane, boots echoing louder than they ever have. Each step seems to disturb something, not the people, for there are none, but the silence itself. A cat darts across the street, the sudden movement startling you more than it should. Even the animals know to hide earlier now. You slow your pace. Behind one door, the soft clink of glass reaches your ears. Behind another, a muffled sigh. Someone whispers a name, then a hush follows, thick and final. It doesn't take much imagination to know what's happening inside those walls. The warm bottles, the swirls of poppy-laced milk, the soft letting go. You cross the street and peer through the fogged window of a bakery. Flour dust still clings to the wooden counter, frozen mid-scatter, as though the baker had simply stopped. The tray of unfinished rolls rests beside a cold oven, untouched. You look at the clock above the door. 6 in the evening, far too early for the shop to be silent, far too early for the city to be asleep. A door creaks open somewhere behind you. You turn to see a man, one you've seen many times, carrying crates for the market, standing in the doorway of his boarding house. His eyes are half-lidded, his shoulders slumped, his shirt only half-buttoned. He looks at you as though from very far away. "You're out late," he murmurs. "It's barely evening," you reply. He blinks at you, slow and confused, then lets out a small laugh. Feels like midnight. He sways as he turns back inside, and the scent drifts after him, sweet, creamy, unmistakably floral. You do not follow. You do not need to see the rooms. You've already seen the other house. You've seen the bodies slack with dream hunger, the bottles glowing on bedside tables. You continue down Bishopsgate. Door after door is locked from within, curtains drawn, lamps dimmed early. The city that once fought sleep tooth and nail now slips willingly into its arms. And as you walk, the truth settles into your bones. London isn't simply tired, it is surrendering. Not to night, night has always come, but to the softness waiting in its cups. A softness so deep, so comforting, that the city no longer fights to stay awake. By the time you reach the end of the street, you realize something chilling. The quiet isn't peaceful. It's unnatural. A hush descending long before the world is ready to sleep, as if London itself is being lulled under, one warm cup at a time. The waiting room smells of damp wool, coal smoke, and something faintly metallic, the scent of fear disguised as illness. You sit among others hunched in wooden chairs, each clutching handkerchiefs or shawls, each wearing the same hopeful exhaustion. Outside, Bishopsgate hums faintly through the walls, but inside this cramped little surgery, time feels slow and muffled, as though thick curtains are draped across the hours. The doctor finally calls your name. You rise, stepping into his small examination room lit by a single oil lamp that flickers against the crowded shelves of bottles. Labels stare back at you. Tonic, cordial, elixir, restorative. But the jar that draws your eye sits half hidden behind a row of cough syrups, amber resin swirled like dried honey, the same shade you have come to recognize in your morning cup. The doctor sees you looking. He shifts slightly, blocking your view. "How have you been sleeping?" he asks, voice calm but strained at the edges. You hesitate before answering. "Well enough. With help." He nods. He does not ask what kind of help. He doesn't need to. He motions for you to sit, his fingers tapping nervously against the table as he lifts your wrist to check your pulse. His touch is gentle, practiced, but the rhythm beneath his fingertips is slower than it should be. You see the faint crease between his brows, a flicker of concern, quickly smoothed away. "You're fatigued," he murmurs. "I always am." He nods again, but his eyes drift toward your pupils, studying the way they move, how slowly they respond to the lamplight. There is a moment, just a heartbeat, when it seems he might say something honest, something warning, something dangerous. But he doesn't. Instead, he steps back to his desk, opening a drawer with a sigh that feels older than he is. He pulls out a small folded paper packet, the same kind you've seen passed quietly between hands in apothecaries, the same kind that dissolves into your milk each morning like dust into sunlight. "You may need a little more help on difficult nights," he says, avoiding your eyes as he sets the packet in your hand. "Stress can be debilitating." London presses on the nerves, as though this city of smoke and sorrow is to blame, not the powder he hands out so freely. You swallow hard. "Is it safe?" He gives a tired half smile. "Everything is safe, in moderation." But you hear the hollowness in his voice. You see the way he rubs his temple, the way he glances toward another drawer, the one he opens for himself when he thinks no one is watching. The drawer he reaches into late at night when the surgery grows quiet, when the loneliness gets too loud. He knows. He has always known. He knows about the slowed pulses, about the memory lapses creeping into his patients' days, about the hollowed eyes of mothers who come begging for more. He knows the city is becoming too calm, too soft, too dependent. But he also knows what happens when a doctor denies comfort to a hurting city. The patients leave. The reputation sours. The income fades. So he looks away. You slip the packet into your coat pocket, feeling its weight settle like a stone. "Thank you, doctor," you say softly. He nods, already turning toward the next patient, his shoulders drooping with a tiredness you recognize all too well. A tiredness that can be soothed with a spoonful of something sweet and warm. As you step back into the waiting room, every face looks the same, worn, hopeful, trusting. Each one waiting for an answer, a cure, a little paper packet that promises sleep. And you understand then, with a cold clarity, London's healers are no longer guarding the city. They are helping it drift deeper into the quiet. The market is usually a place of noise, a living tangle of voices, wheels, clattering crates, and the calls of merchants selling everything from fish to ribbons. But lately, even the marketplace has taken on a strange new stillness. The energy that once pulsed through its narrow lanes now feels muted, as though someone has draped a thick woolen blanket over the entire square. You step into Covent Garden just after dawn, expecting the usual chaos of deliveries. Instead, half the stalls stand unopened, their awnings still tied down. Those that are open seem to move in slow motion. Merchants leaning on counters with dreamy smiles, customers swaying gently as they browse. You move deeper into the market, weaving past clusters of vegetables left unsorted and crates of wilted herbs that no one has had the urgency to clear. A butcher stands over his stall, cleaver resting idly beside a half-cut slab of beef. He doesn't seem tired in the traditional way, not overworked or burdened, but softened, unfocused, floating. Your eyes fall on a small crowd gathered near an apothecary vendor. The stall is arranged neatly with baskets of dried flowers, jars of tonics, and bundles of lavender tied with twine. But what draws the people close is the folded paper packets, stacked discreetly behind a row of herbal teas, little envelopes, pale and thin, each containing a pinch of ground poppy resin. You watch as an elderly woman reaches for one, hands trembling but eager. "Just a touch," she murmurs. "Keeps the nerves from tearing me open." The vendor, a young man with sunken cheeks and a voice soft as ash, does not correct her. He only nods, sliding the packet across the counter. You move closer, listening. Another customer steps forward, a baker you recognize, his apron still dusted with flour. "2 packets today," he whispers. "I ran out by morning." "Of course," the vendor replies. No hesitation, no question. Coins exchange hands, paper rustles, lives drift deeper into softness. You clear your throat as you approach, but the vendor seems to sense you before you speak. His eyes lift calm, glassy, too steady. "What do you need?" he asks, as though the answer is obvious. You hesitate, glancing at the packets. "Do you know what it's doing to people?" you ask quietly. He tilts his head, considering your words the way one might consider a distant noise carried on the wind. "I know it calms them," he says, "and London has not been calm for a very long time. But it's too strong, too much." A small smile curves at his lips. "Everything is too much lately. The resin only helps loosen the grip." He turns his gaze toward the crowd, watching them drift from stall to stall like sleepwalkers in broad daylight. "Look at them," he murmurs. "Do you see panic? Suffering? Rage? No. Only peace." He pauses, and peace sells well. Another customer steps forward, cutting the conversation short. The vendor turns to them without apology, already folding another packet with deft fingers. You step back, watching as more people line up, workers, mothers, laborers, even a pair of schoolboys pretending to look for sweets while their eyes drift toward the hidden packets. The market's heart still beats, but slowly, rhythmically, like a lullaby. A butcher hums softly as he sharpens a knife he has no intention of using. A seamstress stands frozen before a fabric stall, swaying gently, unable to choose a bolt. A flower seller arranges his bouquets in uneven rows, too dreamy to notice the petals wilting. This is no ordinary marketplace anymore. It has become a garden of quiet minds, a square of suspended breaths, a marketplace of sleep. And as you turn to leave, you can't shake the feeling that London is drifting not toward rest, but toward something far deeper, far darker, and far harder to wake from. You hear her humming long before you see her, a soft, wavering tune drifting down the hallway of the tall townhouse where you've come to deliver a message. The melody is thin, almost brittle, like a lullaby sung through half-dreams. It guides you toward the nursery on the 2nd floor, where a faint glow spills beneath the half-closed door. You knock gently. No answer. You knock again. Still nothing, only that trembling tune, slipping through the cracks like smoke. You push the door open. The room is warm, far too warm. A fire crackles low in the grate, its glow rising and falling like a heartbeat. Toys lie scattered across the rug, tin soldiers, wooden horses, a porcelain doll that stares blankly from a chair. But the nursery's usual liveliness is gone. A heavy quiet settles over everything, sweet and suffocating, like breath held too long. Near the crib, the nursemaid sits slouched in a rocking chair. Her apron is wrinkled, her hair half unpinned, her eyes glazed in that familiar way you've learned to recognize. In her hand, she holds a small bottle, warm milk swirling inside with a faint amber tint. Her fingers tap against the glass in a slow, rhythmic beat. You step closer and see the child. The infant sleeps too still, too deeply, breaths spaced far apart. His tiny chest rises in shallow, delayed motions as though each inhale is a decision, not a reflex. "Mary?" you whisper. The nursemaid startles, the bottle slipping slightly in her grasp before she steadies it. "Oh, hello," she murmurs, blinking at you with a slow, pleased smile. He finally settled. Her voice is soft, softer than milk, softer than scents. "How long has he been asleep?" you ask quietly. She shrugs, the movement sluggish. "An hour? 2? Hard to say. He wouldn't stop fussing this morning, not until he had a bit of his special milk." You feel something cold settle beneath your ribs. "Special milk?" you repeat. She nods brightly, proud of herself. The mothers on Milk Lane swear by it. Just a little resin helps him sleep through everything. Easier for him, easier for me. Her words float lazily into the air, landing with a heaviness she doesn't seem to notice. You kneel beside the crib and touch the child's hand, warm, limp, unmoving. He doesn't curl his fingers around yours the way he should. His eyelashes flutter only once. His breathing remains slow, too slow. "Mary," you say carefully, "he's had too much. Babies aren't meant to—" "Oh, nonsense," she interrupts with a soft laugh, waving the bottle carelessly. "It's only milk. Just helps him rest. You've no idea the relief it brings." Her voice dips lower, confessional. "I haven't slept more than an hour at a time since he was born. This is mercy." The room feels suddenly smaller, heavier. The fire pops loudly in the grate, startling you both, though Mary only smiles, dreamy and distant. You take the bottle gently from Egger, her fingers, and set it aside. The child stirs at the change in scent, a faint murmur slipping past his lips, a sound of life, a fragile sound. The nursemaid watches you without protest, her body sinking back into the rocking chair as though gravity has grown stronger. "Everyone uses it," she whispers. "It's harmless, isn't it?" Her voice cracks, but only slightly. You don't answer, because the truth is sitting right in front of you in the small body struggling beneath heavy sleep, in the woman who has traded her exhaustion for oblivion, in the warm bottle that glows like a quiet temptation. You stand in the silence, feeling the weight of London's new shortcut. The shortcut so many now take when the night presses too hard, when the hours grow too long, when the cries of children and the cries of their caretakers blend into something unbearable. And as you watch Mary drift into her own half-dream, head slumping forward, you understand with a clarity that chills you. This city is not just soothing its babies, it is soothing its burdens. And soon, the line between the two will blur so deeply no one will remember where it began. The fog on Ludgate Hill is thicker than usual, tonight dense, pearly, the kind that seems to glow with its own faint light. It curls around the lampposts and clings to the arches of St. Paul's like a slow-moving tide. You pull your coat tighter as you climb the hill, boots muffled against the swelling hush settling over the city. London feels heavier after dusk now, as if the darkness itself has grown drowsy. Ahead of you, 2 watchmen stand beneath a gas lamp, their silhouettes blurred into soft outlines by the fog. They are supposed to keep order on the hill, watch for pickpockets, calm drunkards, guide late workers home when the streets grow uncertain. But tonight, something in their posture is wrong, too relaxed, too slack. You step closer. "Evening," one murmurs without lifting his head. His words drift lazily through the air, slow and syrupy. He leans heavily on his truncheon, barely gripping it. The other watchman rubs his eyes, blinking as though the world keeps slipping out of focus. You pause, studying their faces. Their pupils bloom too wide under the lamplight. Their cheeks are flushed. Their breathing unhurried, unreasonably so. You know this look. You've seen it in kitchens, taverns, nurseries, boarding rooms. "Are you too well?" you ask quietly. The first watchman gives a faint smile, gentle, unfocused. "Just tired," he murmurs. City wears a man down. His partner stifles a yawning laugh. Helps to take the edge off. A sip before the shift keeps the nerves quiet. A sip. You don't need to ask of what. You spot the faint milk stains around the lip of a tin cup resting on a nearby step. Even in the sharp night air, the smell reaches you warm, sweet, heavy with poppy's quiet perfume. "You shouldn't be drinking that on duty," you say softly. The second watchman shrugs, his shoulders moving like they're underwater. No harm in a bit, he replies. Makes the night feel shorter, or slower, or quieter than a man charged with protecting London should ever feel. A bell tolls weakly in the distance, its chime swallowed quickly by the fog. The watchmen barely react. You follow their gaze and realize they're not truly seeing the street anymore. They're drifting, standing upright, but drifting. The first watchman finally straightens, attempting to return to form. "It keeps me calm," he explains, voice trembling with a softness he likely hasn't shown in years. "I get jumpy in the dark. Too many shadows, too many troubles after midnight." He taps his chest lightly. "This quiets all that." You look around. The hill is nearly empty. Londoners who once hurried past with lanterns and clattering boots now vanish early into their homes, slipping behind closed doors long before the 10th hour. And now even the watchmen, those meant to keep the city awake, have joined the descent into milk-soft oblivion. A carriage rattles past, wheels skimming the settee, cobbles. The horse spooks at the sight of the two swaying silhouettes under the lamplight. But the watchmen only blink slowly at the sound, barely lifting their heads. "Go home," one finally whispers to you, his hand drifting lazily through the air. "Streets are safe tonight." Safe. The word hits you like cold water. Safe, not because danger is gone, but because no one is awake enough to notice it. You leave them standing there, drifting in their slow-motion vigil. Ludgate Hill glowing faintly around them like the inside of a fading lantern. And as you descend toward the quieter streets below, a thought chills you more deeply than the fog. When the guardians of the night begin to dream while standing, London has no watch left at all. The music hall on Bishopsgate used to pulse with life, long before the doors opened each evening. You remember how it felt months ago, warm backstage lanterns, frantic hems being stitched, performers adjusting feathered hats, tuning violins, arguing in quick, bright voices over forgotten cues and missing shoes. It was a place that buzzed like electricity, alive with nerves and anticipation. But tonight, as you slip through the backstage door, the first thing you notice is the quiet. Not silence, there is still movement, still breath, but a softened hum, a muffled calm, as though the walls themselves have been wrapped in wool. Lantern light glows gently over the dressing tables, turning everything honey-colored and blurred. Costumes lie draped over chairs, not tossed in chaos, but folded as if someone had taken time they usually don't have. You walk farther in. The troupe is gathered around a table near the stage entrance. Instead of practicing lines or warming their voices, they sit very still, each of them holding a cup of warm milk, steam rising into the dim air. The familiar scent hits you immediately, sweet, warm, threaded with that unmistakable faint resin. A violinist you've known for years, normally jittery, always pacing, now sits slumped contentedly against the wall, bow dangling loosely from her fingers. Her eyes droop in half-dream. She smiles faintly when she sees you. "It helps," she whispers, as though sharing a secret she can't quite name. "My hands don't shake anymore." You look down at her bow hand, steady as stone. Too steady. On stage, the pianist strikes a few slow notes, fingers moving in syrupy motions. The melody should be sharp, bright, something to rouse the crowd gathering outside. Instead, the music drifts like fog, each note dissolving before the next finds ground. You step toward the main dressing room. The chorus girls sit in a cluster before the long mirror, powdering their pale faces with languid movements. Their conversation floats through the room in soft, dreamy fragments. "Didn't sleep last night. It helps with the nerves. I feel like I'm floating. Only a small spoon today." Their makeup is uneven, their rouge smeared slightly off-center, but none of them notice. When one girl rises to adjust her costume, she sways not with tipsy clumsiness, but with the gentle, fluid drift of someone moving through honey rather than air. You find the stage manager leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed loosely. His eyes blink slowly, his gaze sliding past you before returning. "You're early," he murmurs. "You're all tired," you reply. He lets out a soft laugh, low, breathy. "Tired? No, we used to be tired. This," he gestures toward the dreamy haze of performers, "this is better, calmer. Everyone's nerves are smoothed out. No shouting, no panic, no tears before curtain." He pauses. "Even the crowd's quieter lately. It's pleasant, really. Pleasant." The word tastes strange in your mouth as you look toward the stage. The glow from the footlights swims gently across the boards, casting soft halos around drifting dust. The hall should be bursting with anticipation, with the sharp tension of performers preparing themselves. Instead, everything feels suspended, floating just above reality. A bell rings, faintly curtain time. The cast begins moving toward the stage, but their steps are slow, almost gliding, their smiles serene, their eyes heavy. They look like sleepwalkers stepping into a dream shaped by applause, and you realize, with a quiet dread, that the music hall is no longer a place of performance. It has become a sanctuary, a refuge for frayed nerves and trembling hands, a place where London's weary hearts come to feel lighter, softer, even if only because they've laced their courage with poppy. As the curtain rises and the stage fills with dim golden light, the audience gasps softly, not at the show, but at the strange and gentle beauty of performers drifting through their roles like ghosts. The music hall glows tonight, but it glows with more than lantern light. It glows with a sweetness settling over the city, a sweetness no applause can ever truly erase. The factories were never meant to be quiet. They were built for noise, roaring gears, shrieking belts, iron teeth grinding against iron bones. For years, the clamour spilled through London's streets from dawn until long after dusk. A constant metallic heartbeat that shaped the rhythm of entire neighbourhoods. Children grew up with it. Workers lived by it. Even the air seemed to vibrate with its relentless motion. But lately, the factories no longer sound like living engines. They breathe differently now. You approach the textile mill on Bishopsgate just after sunrise. The fog swirls around the towering brick walls, muting the edges of the building like a half-faded memory. Usually, at this hour, the chimneys would already be coughing out plumes of grey smoke. Today, only thin wisps rise hesitant, drifting, faint. At the entrance, the foreman leans against the doorway, his cap crooked on his head. He isn't shouting orders or waving workers inside with his usual briskness. Instead, he stares into the distance with half-lidded eyes, his hands resting loosely on his suspenders. He looks softened, smoothed out, as though someone has taken sandpaper to his nerves and rounded every sharp edge. "You're late," he mumbles when he notices you, but his voice carries no urgency, only a gentle, sleepy resignation. Inside, the machines whir unevenly. Looms clack with a strange, staggered rhythm, like a heartbeat unsure of its next beat. Workers stand at their posts with dream-heavy expressions, their movements slow and oddly graceful. Fabric bunches, threads tangle, dyes spill, but no one reacts, no one snaps or curses or panics. They simply blink, smile faintly, and continue. You pass a row of spinners, their hands guiding the fibers with unnerving precision. Too precise, too steady. "Good morning," one of them says, her voice drifting like a sigh. She doesn't look up from her work. Her eyes stay fixed on the wheel, pupils wide, unfocused. You notice a small bottle tucked beneath her stool, half full, its contents milky and slightly tinted with that all-too-familiar amber hue. Another bottle sits on a nearby crate, and another by the dyeing vats. The sweet scent clings to the air, blending with the usual smells of grease and wet cloth. The foreman wanders past you again, rubbing his temples. "Workers aren't arguing anymore," he mutters. "No more fights, no more breakdowns. Productivity's down, but the peace is nice. The peace of a factory fallen into a warm, drugged lull." You watch a young boy load spools onto a machine, His hands are steady, unnaturally so, but his eyes droop as he works. He misses a step, and the machine jerks violently, snapping a thread. He doesn't flinch. He simply smiles, as if the mistake were a pleasant surprise. The clatter of gears mixes with the faint humming of voices, soft melodies sung under breath, too slow to match the rhythm of the work. It feels like the entire building is dreaming, shifting between wakefulness and something deeper. You move toward the far end of the mill, where the dying vats bubble quietly. A woman stands over them, stirring with a long paddle. Her movements are slow, almost hypnotic, like she's dancing with the fumes. "I used to dread this part of the job," she tells you without turning around. "My back would ache, my arms would shake, but now," she breathes deeply, "it's easier." You step back, heart tightening, because the truth is, everywhere around you, in the softened faces, the too steady hands, the lowered voices, the fading urgency, the factories aren't quiet because work has lessened. They are quiet because the workers have. London's engines still turn, but the people who feed them are drifting deeper each day into the sweetness that steals their pain, their exhaustion, their awareness. And as you leave the mill, stepping back into the pale morning light, you realize the city is not just falling asleep, it is sleepwalking, and its factories hum gently like lullabies, guiding it deeper into the dark. You don't mean to wander into Soho, not tonight, but your feet carry you there as though remembering a path your thoughts have not yet dared to follow. The lanterns glow low along the narrow streets, their light smeared into gold by the thickening fog. Shop windows glimmer with half-hearted life. The sound of distant laughter trickles through an alleyway like spilled wine. But beneath all of it, there is a softness, a strange, hazy calm settling over the district like dust. You hear the rumor first. There are rooms now, hidden rooms, warm rooms, poppy rooms. It sounds absurd, dangerous, impossible. And yet, your steps continue. You turn down an alley lined with brick walls slick from fog. A lone man stands outside a red door, blowing pale smoke from between parted lips. His eyes drift toward you but do not focus. They half see, half dream. He nods, as if recognizing something familiar in your gaze, then taps twice against the door. A latch clicks. The door opens. Warmth spills into the night. You step inside. The first sensation is heat wrapping around you, clinging to your coat, seeping into your skin. Then comes the scent. Sweet, creamy, floral, heavy enough to taste. The air feels thick, like it's been stirred with warm milk and slow breaths. You move forward into a long, dim hallway lined with velvet curtains that muffle sound and swallow shadows whole. Beyond the curtains, you hear voices low, murmuring, drifting as though spoken underwater. A woman in a silk robe appears, her eyes glowing softly in the candlelight. "You knew?" she asks, voice smooth as warm syrup. You nod before you can stop yourself. She parts one of the curtains and gestures for you to enter. Inside, the room is small but lush, draped in fabrics that shimmer in the flicker of candlelight. People lie on cushions along the floor, limbs relaxed, their bodies folding into the softness as though gravity has loosened its grip. In the center sits a kettle on a low brazier, steam rising in delicate spirals. Next to it stands a tray of cups, porcelain, mismatched, stained with the faint amber hue of poppy resin. A young man dips a spoon into a jar and stirs it into a cup of warm milk. His hands are steady, too steady. He looks up at you. "It's stronger here," he says, as though offering a gift. Stronger than what the milkmen sell. Stronger than the apothecaries dare to mix. Someone on a cushion laughs softly, the sound floating like a feather. Another hums a lullaby to no one in particular. A girl sits by the window, head resting against the sill, eyes half open but seeing nothing except whatever dream she has slipped into. The room feels alive in a strange way, not with movement, but with warmth, with surrender. The woman hands you a cup. "You don't have to drink it," she murmurs, reading the tension in your hands. "Most people do, but you can just stay a while. Let the calm sit with you." You stand there, cup in hand, watching the room tilt gently on its axis. The sweetness of the air sinks deeper into your lungs. You feel the urge, the same quiet hunger you've seen in others, tugging at the edges of your thoughts. But then you notice something else. In the corner, behind the haze, lies a young man who appears asleep, but his chest doesn't rise. His skin is too pale. A girl sitting beside him strokes his hair with slow, mechanical motions, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the truth settling beside her. You step back. Your breath catches. The room sways. The warmth feels suddenly suffocating. You set the cup down untouched, trembling, and slip through the curtain before the sweetness can drag you under. Outside, the night air hits your face like cold water. You gulp it in, letting the fog and the chill chase the warmth from your lungs. And as you walk away from the red door, heart pounding, one realization follows you through the emptying streets of Soho. London is no longer searching for comfort in its homes, its markets, its taverns. It is building entire rooms for dreaming, and the dreams are beginning to claim their sleepers. Her silhouette appears in the window each evening before the lamps are lit, fragile, unmoving, outlined in the soft grey glow of Bishopsgate's fading day. You've grown accustomed to seeing her there, a quiet figure watching the street with an expression neither curious nor mournful, but suspended somewhere in between. The neighbours call her the widow in the window, though few have spoken to her since the funeral months ago. Tonight, as you walk past her narrow townhouse, the fog rising in slow curls from the cobblestones, you feel a pull, an urge to look up, and there she is again, framed by the worn curtains, her posture too still for someone merely observing the street. In her hand, she holds a cup. Even from below, you recognize the shape, the delicate china with the faint blue flowers around the rim, the kind used not for tea, but for warm, sweet milk, poppy milk. Her fingers rest lightly around it, unmoving, as though the cup has become part of her hand. Her shoulders slump forward with an exhaustion you can feel across the street. The candle behind her gutter flickers once, stretching her shadow long across the wallpapered room. You pause beneath her window. For a long moment, she does nothing. Then, slowly she lifts the cup. You watch her drink. The motion is careful, almost reverent. She tilts her head just enough for the liquid to pass her lips. When she lowers the cup again, the faintest, saddest sigh slips from her chest, forming a small cloud against the cold pane. You remember the rumors. Her husband, a dock worker, fell ill one winter night and never woke. Her brother, grief-stricken, brought her a small jar of poppy resin to calm her nerves during the weeks that followed. She used it sparingly at first, just a spoon to still her trembling hands, to lift the crushing weight in her lungs. But sorrow has a way of stretching its shadow, and soon the milk became her anchor, her lullaby, her escape. You take a step toward the door. Inside, the widow lowers herself into a chair beside the window. You can see her thin frame sag with every breath. The room is dim, lit only by that stubborn candle, and the warm haze of steam drifting from the cup. Her gaze doesn't follow the street. It drifts somewhere far beyond it into memories she cannot bear to relive while awake. A carriage rattles past, shaking the ground. She doesn't react. Someone calls out to a neighbor. She doesn't blink. A dog barks, sharp against the quiet. She does not seem to hear it. The poppy has softened her grief, but it is softening everything else too. Her movements melt into the chair. Her breath grows slower. Her chin dips toward her chest. You step back into the shadows, heart tightening, because this is not rest. This is retreat. The kind born from wounds too deep for the city's noise to soothe. The widow in the window is not watching the world. She is slipping away from it. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in small, quiet sips, one warm evening after another. London walks past her house each day, bustling and unaware. Yet behind that narrow pane of glass, beneath that dim flickering candle, a woman is sinking slowly into dreams she no longer wishes to wake from. And as you turn toward home, the image follows you through the fog. A lonely silhouette, a cooling cup, and a city losing its people not to death but to forgetting. You hear them before you see them, the soft scuff of shoes against cobblestone, the quiet giggles that flutter through the fog like small, uncertain birds. It's late afternoon on Bishopsgate, the hour when children usually spill into the streets after finishing their chores, chasing one another beneath the lamplighters' poles or skipping stones toward the river. But today, the laughter feels different, quieter, hollow at the edges. You follow the sound toward the narrow alley beside the baker's shop. The smell of yeast and smoke lingers in the air, but underneath it lies another scent, faint, sweet, unmistakable. Your heart sinks even before you round the corner. There, crouched in a small circle on the cold ground, a group of boys huddle over a stolen bottle of milk. You recognize two of them, the butcher's son, with his unruly curls, and the lamplighter's nephew, usually full of restless brightness. But their brightness has dimmed now. Their cheeks are flushed, their smiles loose and unfocused. The bottle sits between them, its surface smudged with fingerprints, the liquid inside tinted with the faintest blush of amber resin. "Only a little," one boy whispers, his fingers already reaching for the cork. "My mum takes it," another mutters. "Says it makes her forget the hard days." Well, the tallest shrugs. "We had a hard day too." They laugh again, soft, dreamy giggles that don't belong to children their age. You step forward. The tallest sees you first. He stiffens, swallowing hard, hiding the bottle behind his back as though you haven't already seen it. His eyes widen in sudden shame or perhaps fear, but the poppy-soft haze makes his reaction slow, sluggish. "We weren't doing anything wrong," he murmurs. You kneel down, heart aching. "Where did you get it?" The butcher's son shifts uncomfortably. Off the cart. It was warm. Thought, we'd try what the grown-ups do. One boy rubs his eyes with the heel of his hand, blinking as though the world keeps drifting in and out of focus. "It makes everything quiet," he says softly. "My head, it gets so loud sometimes." Your breath catches. Children are not supposed to know that kind of noise. Children are not supposed to crave quiet so deeply. You gently take the bottle from them. It is lighter than you expect, almost empty. A thin ring of warm sweetness clings to the glass. One of the boys reaches for it instinctively, fingers trembling. "Please," he whispers, "just a little more. It makes my stomach stop hurting." He's too young to understand the difference between hunger and numbness. You place the bottle out of reach. The boys begin to sway where they sit, their shoulders drooping, eyes heavy with the early pull of poppy-induced drowsiness. One leans against the wall, sliding down until he sits slumped, breath slow, lips parted. Another yawns, his small body folding into itself like a wilted flower. You gather them gently to their feet. "Come on," you say. "You need air." The cold evening wind nips at their faces as you guide them back toward the street. The fog curls around them like a shawl, and you hold their hands tightly, as if anchoring them to the waking world. Their steps are unsteady, their heads loll. Children should not walk like this, as if drifting between dreaming and waking, as if sleep has learned to cling to them like shadow. As you lead them home one by one, returning them to worried parents who do not yet understand what is happening, you feel something tighten deep inside your chest. This is how it spreads, not through men in taverns or mothers in kitchens, but through small hands, small hearts, small sips taken in alleys where no one is watching. And as the last child disappears behind his doorway, you know, London's newest generation is learning too soon what the city has sought in secret: how to quiet pain, how to chase peace, how to drift. And the thought follows you into the deepening fog. If this is how early it begins, how early will they forget how to stop? You notice him first by the way he walks. Not hurried, not purposeful, just drifting, as though each step is chosen for him by the soft rhythm of the street rather than by his own intention. His coat, once pressed and immaculate, hangs loosely from his shoulders. His boots scuff the cobblestones in uneven whispers, and his eyes, grey, unfocused, float somewhere far beyond the world around him. You've known this merchant for years. Once, he He was a man of sharp corners and sharper words, haggling over prices with the precision of a knife. His stall on Bishopsgate had always been alive with shouting, laughter, the rustle of imported fabrics and polished brass. He knew every regular customer by name. He remembered their children, their debts, their favorite colors. But now, when he passes by, there is only a faint smile, thin, dreamy, the kind born not of joy, but of absence. You follow him at a distance. He moves through the fog as though he cannot feel the cold, weaving gently between carriages and carts. A milk bottle swings limply from his fingers. Not the usual morning purchase. This bottle is still warm, steam curling softly beneath the cork. The amber tint in the liquid glows faintly like a captured sunset. He pauses at a street corner, blinking at a signpost with a puzzled tilt of the head. You can almost hear the question lingering behind his eyes. Where was I going? The thought seems to drift away before it fully forms. He steps into the nearest alley, wandering past a row of closed shutters. You hurry to catch up. When you call his name, his real name, he turns, brow furrowed in deep concentration, as though he's searching a distant memory buried under layers of fog. I know that name, he murmurs, voice soft, uncertain. A pause. Was that mine? The words pierce something inside you. He laughs, then a fragile, wavering sound that cracks down the middle. He lifts the bottle to his lips and takes a long, dreamy sip. When he lowers it again, the confusion melts from his expression. His shoulders relax, his smile returns, slow and serene. That's better, he whispers, as though speaking to himself. Everything feels lighter. He stares at you again, eyes hazy. Have we met? He asks gently. Your throat tightens. He has known you half your life. He once lent you a coat on a freezing morning. He once wept over a shipping ledger when he lost a crate of precious goods. He once shouted your name across the street with joy. And now, nothing. The milk bottle slips slightly from his fingers. You catch it before it shatters on the stones. He watches you with the passive curiosity of a child. Where were you going? You ask quietly. He blinks at the question. His lips part. His eyes drift. He turns slowly toward the street, gaze wandering upward as though reading invisible words written in the fog. I think, he begins, then stops. I think I used to know. A gust of cold wind sweeps through the alley, scattering bits of paper. He does not flinch. He only tucks the bottle back into the crook of his arm, holding it like one might hold comfort, memory, identity. He steps past you, wandering again. Not lost, just untethered. As he disappears into the swirling mist, a chilling realization settles in your bones. This is what the poppy takes first, not the body, not the breath, but the self. And somewhere in the quiet streets of Bishopsgate, London is forgetting itself one warm sip at a time. The hospital sits like a silent giant at the edge of Bishopsgate, its stone walls pale beneath the morning fog, its windows glowing faintly with weak lantern light. You've passed it countless times, always hearing the usual chorus within, groans of patients, hurried footsteps of nurses, the sharp clink of instruments being boiled awake for the day's work. But today, as you approach the iron gates, an unfamiliar quiet pools in the air. A quiet so heavy it feels like a blanket draped over the entire building. You push the door open. Inside, a nurse you dimly know stands at the reception table, her hands folded loosely in front of her. She does not look up when you enter. Her eyes remain fixed on some distant point beyond your shoulder, as though the world behind you is fading into a dream she cannot fully see. Is everything all right? You ask softly. Her lips twitch toward a smile, but it never reaches her eyes. Oh yes, she whispers. We've had a peaceful morning. Peaceful. The word tastes wrong. She leads you down the corridor. The gas lamps overhead flicker with weak, fluttering light, as though weary from burning through too many sleepless nights. Shadows stretch across the tiled floor in long, trembling shapes. The faint smell of antiseptic mingles with something else, something sweet, floral, warm, and subtle. the scent of poppy. It clings to the air like mist. You reach the first ward. The beds line both walls in perfect rows, each draped in white linens that look too pristine, too undisturbed. The patients lie still beneath them, some curled softly on their sides, others resting flat with hands atop their chests. Their faces are peaceful, almost serene, but there is something wrong about the stillness, something too deep, too absolute. A doctor stands near the far bed, his posture wilted from exhaustion. He lifts a lantern, casting a dim pool of golden light across his patient's face. The woman looks asleep, beautifully so, in a way that life rarely allows. But when the doctor lightly touches her arm, she does not stir. He sighs. "She was awake earlier," he murmurs without looking at you. "Just long enough to drink her morning dose." You step closer. On the table beside the bed sits a cup porcelain, chipped at the rim. A thin film of warm milk clings to its base, tinged with a familiar amber swirl. You scan the ward. Cup after cup sits beside beds, each with the same faint residue. Nurses move softly between patients, their steps slow, unhurried, dreamlike. They sleep longer now, the doctor continues. His voice trembles. Longer than before. Some wake, some take more convincing. You swallow hard. Why do you give it to them? He looks at you, then truly looks, and you see the guilt pooled beneath his tired eyes. "They ask for it," he whispers. "They beg for it. They say the pain is too much. The city is too loud. Their hearts won't stop racing. And I didn't want to be cruel." He turns his lantern toward another bed. A man lies there with an arm in a splint. His chest rises and falls, but barely. His eyelids flutter, as though trapped in a dream he cannot escape. His fingers twitch once, weakly, then fall still. "It takes the pain away," the doctor murmurs, "but it takes everything else with it." A nurse enters the ward, carrying a tray of fresh cups. She moves in soft, practiced motions, setting one beside each bed with a tenderness that feels too final. You step out of the ward, heart heavy. Behind you, the lantern light flickers. Dozens of sleepers lie beneath its glow, each drifting slowly into deeper quiet. As you walk down the corridor, the nurse at the reception desk looks at you again, her eyes glazed, her smile soft. "So peaceful today," she repeats. And you realize, with a chill that sinks beneath your skin, the hospital is no longer a place for healing. It is becoming a cradle for the city's slow descent, a ward where London slips gently into forgetful, endless sleep. The first light of dawn presses weakly against the rooftops of Bishopsgate, a pale haze spilling over chimneys and alleyways. You step onto the cobblestones, the chill of early morning biting through your coat, and hear the familiar scrape of brooms against stone. Street sweepers are out, as they always have been, carrying their worn brushes and bundles of straw. But something is different. The rhythm of their work is slow, deliberate, not hurried, not urgent, not alive. You walk past them, noting the subtle sway in their gait, the way their arms move with a softness that seems at odds with their labor. Usually, by this hour, the streets are a battleground of early trade, carts rumbling, vendors calling, workers hurrying past. Now the air is thick with fog and something else, an invisible weight pressing down, slowing the city to a near whisper. The sweepers nod to one another lazily, their eyes half-lidded, pupils dilated as though the night's rest never fully released them. A few sip from small cups tucked into their belts, the liquid curling in faint tendrils of steam. You recognize it immediately, the pale milk tinged with amber, warm and fragrant with poppy, a familiar scent now embedded in the waking hours of London. One man drops his broom mid-sweep. The bristles scrape softly against the stones, the sound almost lost beneath the low hum of fog. He doesn't notice. He doesn't turn. Instead, he lifts the cup to his lips, tilts his head back, and drinks. When he lowers it, his shoulders slump in a manner that seems both exhausted and perfectly at ease. You pause and watch another sweep across the street. His steps falter briefly, then regain a slow, measured grace, almost hypnotic. Every motion is softened, rounded, deliberate. The weight of the city's grime and coal dust seems to lift from his hands, absorbed into the warmth of the cup, dissolved by the invisible threads of resin swirling within. The cobblestones glisten under faint dew, reflecting the golden light of street lamps, still struggling to fade. A stray cat darts past, pausing to sniff at a puddle, then slips quietly into the fog. Even the animals move differently now, as though the city itself has adjusted its tempo, teaching all who dwell within to drift, to float, to sway softly in sync with an unseen lullaby. You follow the sweepers for a few streets, noting how entire neighborhoods have begun to settle into this strange quiet. Doors remain closed, windows are dimmed, the usual bustle of merchants setting up stalls, of children racing to school, of servants hurrying to light fires, has softened into a dreamlike cadence, and yet no one seems alarmed, no one seems to notice the subtle transformation. One sweep pauses, brushing his fingers absently along a wet ledge, and looks up at you. His eyes are warm but distant, fixed somewhere between the street and the world beyond. He gives a small nod, as though acknowledging the presence of someone awake enough to witness the change, and continues without a word. And in that moment, you understand what has begun in London. The city itself is learning to move more softly, to breathe in a slower rhythm, to follow the invisible currents of warmth and quiet seeping into its streets. The sweepers at dawn are not just cleaning, they are conduits, walking vessels of a subtle, pervasive hush that drifts from hand to hand, cup to cup, street to street. As you step away, the soft scrape of bristles lingers behind you like a fading song. Bishopsgate, the alleys, the lanes, all are breathing in sweetness now, waiting for the rest of the city to follow. The bakery smells of flour, yeast, and the faint tang of last night's burnt sugar. You enter through the swinging door just as the first hints of dawn brush the rooftops with pale light. The street outside is misted, quiet, almost unreal, but inside, the ovens still hum faintly, radiating heat that seeps into your coat and curls around your breath. You hear it first, a sudden clatter, a metallic clang that makes your heart jump, and then the soft thud of a body. The baker lies sprawled near the oven. His apron is damp with sweat, streaked with flour and dough, and his hands curl unnaturally at his sides. The tray of half-baked loaves slides across the counter, bumping against the edge and scattering flour into the air. You step closer, noticing the subtle amber sheen on the small cup at the edge of the preparation table. Warm milk with poppy resin left too long, perhaps, or too strong. He does not stir. You bend down, brushing a hand across his forehead. It's hot, clammy, and yet soft, as though the warmth itself is pressing him down rather than lifting him. You glance at the cup again. The faint, sweet scent clings to the air, curling around your senses like smoke. The faintest trace of amber touches your nostrils. You know instantly, it is not just fatigue that has claimed him. This is the city, creeping slowly into its own. A small bell jingles somewhere in the back, announcing a delivery or perhaps a stray customer. The sound echoes hollowly through the bakery, swallowed almost entirely by the thick, warm silence. You glance around. Every table, every shelf, every corner of the room seems to hold the same heavy, hazy stillness. The other workers, if there are any, are nowhere in sight. Perhaps they've already succumbed to the same softened rhythm, the same quiet draw that binds the city one sip at a time. You gently lift the baker, noticing how limp he is, how his muscles have lost their usual tension. He does not groan or struggle, he does not blink. He drifts, unresisting, and you realize the heat from the oven has done nothing to wake him. The warmth he needed, he sought it, and it has arrived, but not without cost. The poppy, the milk, the soft hush of dawn, it has claimed him first, and yet the process is endless. Outside, Bishopsgate is beginning to stir. Footsteps scrape over stone, distant voices hum faintly, and carriage wheels rattle across cobblestones. But the bakery, nestled within the fog and light, is a bubble apart from it all. The city moves outside, yet within these walls, life has been replaced by something else. A stillness so complete it borders on reverence, yet hums with quiet danger. You place your hands beneath him and lift, the weight startlingly light despite the strength that once filled his frame. The tray of bread rattles softly against the counter. You step toward the door, carrying him into the cold dawn, letting the fog wrap around both of you like a thin, protective sheet. And as you leave, heart tightening, you understand with a slow, creeping certainty, the ovens still burn, the bread will rise, but the people feeding the city are learning to sleep before their work is done. Whitechapel's fog presses low tonight, thick enough to blur lanterns into halos and muffling the sounds of the city that usually never sleeps. You step into the narrow alleyways, cobblestones slick beneath your boots, and immediately feel the difference. The usual bustle, the cries of street vendors, the clatter of carts, the children darting between shadows is absent. Only the faint shuffle of footsteps and occasional cough echo through the mist, giving the streets an eerie, tentative life. Ahead, a crowd gathers near a dimly lit doorway, voices low and urgent, yet tinged with the same hazy calm you have begun to recognize. Mothers clutch their children to their chests, some rocking them gently while others grip warm bottles in their hands. The amber sheen of milk swirls faintly in the candlelight, curling like smoke and mingling with the fog. A scent of sweetness hangs in the air, floral, earthy, impossible to ignore. You know it instantly. Poppy. The people move slowly, almost hypnotically, as if each step has been measured against the quiet pulse of the city. A man leans against a doorway, swaying slightly, eyes half closed, hands wrapped around a warm cup. He murmurs to no one in particular. It keeps the night soft, easier to breathe. His words float into the fog, soft, almost inaudible, yet laden with relief. Relief that comes at a cost. You move closer, weaving between the figures, and notice a child stumbling behind a mother, tiny fingers curled around a small bottle. The infant's eyes are heavy, lids fluttering as though caught between dreams and wakefulness. The mother whispers assurances, but her voice trembles. Even she cannot entirely mask the unnatural calm settling over them. Each sip, each drop of warmth, steals more than sleeplessness. It robs the city of vigilance, of edge, of fear, leaving only a hollow, quiet ease that feels wrong. A nurse steps forward from the crowd, carrying a tray of cups. She moves carefully, each motion measured, graceful, almost rehearsed. She sets a cup at the feet of a man who leans against a wall, blinking slowly, and another at a child's side. No one protests, no one hurries. The fear that might usually linger in Whitechapel danger from alleys, from strangers, from shadows has been muffled, softened by the warmth in the cups, the invisible threads of poppy weaving through every breath. You watch a baker stumble past, coat dusted with flour, holding his cup close to his chest. His eyes are glazed, distant, yet there is a smile tugging faintly at the corners of his lips. Relief, you think, and then you see the cost, the slight faltering in his steps, the subtle sway, the softness that drains life from the way he carries himself. This is no longer mere fatigue. It is the city learning to drift before its work is done. As the crowd begins to disperse into the alleys and fog, you step back, letting the warmth and stillness wash over you like a tide. The quiet is unnatural, pervasive. London exhales, a long, dreamlike sigh that hums in your chest. You know this is only the beginning tonight. It's Whitechapel. Tomorrow, who knows which street will learn to surrender first. The panic is gone. The vigilance has gone. Only the sweetness remains. And as you walk away, the fog curling around your boots, you understand with chilling clarity. The city is forgetting itself one sip at a time. The Guildhall sits hidden behind a narrow street, its facade unremarkable, doors heavy with the weight of years and secrecy. You push them open and step into the dim interior. The air smells faintly of wax, damp wood, and dust. The flicker of gas lamps casts elongated shadows that crawl across the walls, swallowing the corners where whispers linger. The room is quiet, but the quiet has substance, a presence that presses gently against your chest. Inside, the guild members gather in loose circles, robes draped over shoulders, eyes cast downward. Their voices are low, murmured like prayers, punctuated only by the occasional shuffle of feet or the soft clink of a cup set upon a table. They speak of supply, of trade, of quality, but each word carries the undercurrent of denial. They know, they all know, yet the words slide past their lips as if the truth is too dangerous to hold. You approach the central table, noting the careful arrangement of bottles and jars. Milk in small ceramic cups glows faintly under the flickering light. Some are untouched. Others bear the residue of pale amber swirls that settle slowly, the faintest trace of poppy suspended in each drop. Guild members move between them, measuring, tasting, adjusting, but always with a deliberate softness that belies their usual precision. This is not commerce, it is ritual, a dance around the reality they refuse to name. One man, older than the rest, with thin spectacles perched precariously on the bridge of his nose, lifts a cup and studies it as if it might speak back to him. "It's only enough to calm them," he murmurs, his tone uncertain. "Only enough to settle the nerves." His words trail into silence, swallowed immediately by the flickering shadows. You notice the tremor in his hands, the hesitation in his movements. He knows it is more than nerves. He knows the city drinks and sleeps in quiet submission. And yet, he offers no objection. A younger member nods along, eyes heavy, voice soft. It keeps the mothers from fretting, keeps the workers steady. No one complains. It is necessary. The pause that follows is deliberate, a silent admission to what everyone already understands but none will name. You watch the words hover in the air, heavy with unspoken guilt. The warmth of the milk seems to permeate the room itself, and you feel it tug at your limbs, as if the sweetness outside the cups has begun to seep into the very walls. You move toward the far corner, where more bottles rest on a low shelf. Some have been set aside for inspection, but the cups remain untouched for only a moment. Hands reach out automatically, stirring faint amber swirls, testing the consistency, inhaling the gentle scent of calm and oblivion. The guild members exchange glances, quick, knowing, almost conspiratorial, but their eyes are dulled, softened. The city outside continues its drift, and the guild hall holds its quiet denial like a shield, keeping both themselves and the foretime wider streets from seeing the true consequences. As you step back toward the door, the muffled conversation drifts behind you, soft as distant water. The milk glows faintly in the lamplight, bottles lined in neat rows, waiting to carry the city further into its calm. The members of the guild do not notice you leave, too absorbed in their careful balancing act, too committed to pretending that this is merely commerce and not the gentle surrender of an entire city. London's streets may still hum outside, but inside the hall, denial has taken root, and the quiet that follows is not peace, it is the city bending beneath the weight of its own sweetness. The parlours are quiet in the late afternoon, their windows streaked with the last light of the sun filtering through London's ever-present fog. You enter one as the house seems to exhale a soft, steady sigh. Furniture is arranged with meticulous care, but the air carries an odd heaviness, as though the space itself has grown aware of its occupant's fragility. The carpet muffles each step, the walls absorb each whisper, and the faint scent of tea and waxed wood mixes with the subtle sweetness of poppy drifting from a nearby cup. A woman reclines in a high-backed chair by the hearth, her hands folded over her lap. She tilts her head, eyes fluttering shut, then opens them briefly, as if to test reality before sinking back again. Across the room, another rests her cheek against the arm of a settee, breath slow, even, unbroken, and soft as a lullaby. Both are quiet, almost impossibly still, their movements deliberate yet feather-light, as though guided by an invisible hand. You approach the first woman cautiously. She lifts a small cup, amber-hued, and sips it with a delicate precision. The liquid swirls lazily inside the porcelain, rising into a faint steam that curls toward her face. You smell it before you see it fully. Warm milk, sweet with the faintest whisper of poppy, heavy and soothing. She lets it linger in her mouth, and you notice the tension around her jaw relax. Her shoulders droop further, and a slow sigh escapes, barely audible over the crackle of the fire. The second woman stirs, turning toward you, and her eyes are glassy, unsteady. She sways slightly, as though the chair beneath her has become a boat on calm water. The cup in her hand trembles, though she does not notice. A faint amber line traces the porcelain's rim, a mark of indulgence, of habit, of escape. The firelight reflects off the liquid and glimmers on her face, softening the edges of worry, pain, and weariness. Across the room, a third woman struggles to sit upright on a fainting couch. Her hands clutch the sides tightly, knuckles white, lips parted as if to call out, but no sound comes. She has taken her cup, and now the warmth courses through her, blanketing her nerves with a sleepy fog. The world outside the window, the clatter of carts, the distant shouts of children, the breath of London itself shrinks to a soft murmur. You realize the pattern. The city's women have discovered a temporary reprieve, a stolen calm, yet it is not rest they receive. It is a gentle sedation. Each sip softens the sharp edges of their lives, dissolves the weight pressing against their chests, blurs the boundaries between waking and dreaming. The parlors are no longer rooms for conversation, for sewing, for reading aloud to children. They are chambers of quiet surrender. As you step back, your gaze sweeps the room. Cups sit on side tables, carefully arranged, some full, some half consumed. Faces tilt into the lamplight, eyes heavy with the pull of softened nerves. The warmth of Sim de Vase, the milk, the sweet drift of poppy, the gentle hush that pervades these spaces, all of it conspires to draw the women deeper into a suspended calm. Outside, the fog rolls across the streets, brushing against the houses like a pale hand. Inside, the parlors breathe in the sweetness, exhaling it slowly, wrapping the women in a quiet that will last until the next cup is poured. And you understand, with a chill that creeps through the bones, that London is learning to trade its vitality for a soft, fleeting peace, one sip, one fainting spell, one parlor at a time. The streets are restless with anticipation. You move through Bishopsgate and the adjoining alleys, sensing a subtle tension in the air that did not exist before. Lanterns sway faintly in the thick fog, casting long, wavering shadows across slick cobblestones. The city seems to inhale sharply, holding its breath as if aware of something missing. At the market, carts sit abandoned, vendors lean against shuttered stalls, and windows glow with the soft amber of unsipped milk still waiting on the tables inside. The milk is gone, or almost gone. Not the ordinary milk of the morning vendors, the pale, creamy sustenance, but the fortified cups, the warm draughts laced with poppy resin that have quietly carried London through its restless nights. Rumors circulate among those who rise early and wander late. A shortage has struck. Bottles that once promised calm, quiet, and soft surrender are scarce. Mothers clutch empty cups, hands trembling, eyes darting toward every passing figure. Children watch from window sills, whispering among themselves, unsure whether the missing comfort is a sign of change or calamity. You approach the first house, where the news has already taken root. A mother sits on the stoop, wrapped in a threadbare shawl, holding an empty cup to her chest as if the warmth it once carried might return by mere will. Her eyes are wide and frightened, scanning the street for carts that do not come. She rocks herself slowly, whispering to her child, "It will come soon. It must." The child's small fingers clutch hers, grasping for reassurance that neither of them truly feels. At the bakery, you find a line of people stretching into the mist. They wait silently for hours, hands tucked into pockets or folded against their chests, murmuring in low tones about who received the last bottles yesterday and who has none. The vendors speak in soft, hurried reassurances that carry no weight. Every cup handed over is weighed against need and rumor, every measured drop a lifeline in a city learning to depend on it. You walk further, noticing how the absence of poppy-laced milk shifts the rhythm of London. Workers move more restlessly, footsteps echoing sharper, voices higher. The soft lethargy that has long blanketed taverns, parlours, nurseries and workshops is replaced by anxious energy, a low hum of worry that vibrates through the fog. Even animals seem unsettled, their cries sharper, their movements abrupt. In a boarding house, the tenants gather around a single remaining bottle, passing it from hand to hand in almost ceremonial fashion. They sip sparingly, eyes flickering with both relief and panic. The room hums with a tension previously unknown, lives unsoftened by warmth, hearts uncooled, minds alert and anxious for the first time in weeks. The silence of the city's dependence fractures here, revealing the fragile skeleton beneath the habit. As you step back into the streets, the fog curls tighter, almost pressing against you. London is awake tonight, trembling in the absence of what it has learned to crave. The city's heart beats unevenly, a reminder of how reliant it has become and how swiftly panic can follow the slightest disruption. The milk famine is not just a shortage, it is a test, and the city, long softened by sweetness, is discovering just how fragile its calm truly is. The first light of dawn spills across Bishopsgate with a clarity that feels almost unnatural, as if the fog itself has been held at bay just long enough for the city to take stock. You step out into the street, boots silent against the cobblestones, and feel the difference immediately. The air is cold and sharp, carrying the faint scent of coal smoke and damp stone, but also something else, a hollow quiet, stripped of the familiar warmth of milk and resin that had long softened every corner of London. Windows are open here and there, shutters drawn back, but inside the rooms, you see figures stirring for the first time in days. Mothers sit upright in their chairs, hands clutching empty cups, eyes wide and alert. Children peek from behind curtains, blinking rapidly, unaccustomed to waking so fully. The city exhales, tense and uncertain, like a creature suddenly aware of its own heartbeat. You pass the bakery, where the ovens glow faintly, and notice the staff moving with hesitant precision. Loaves are being prepared with careful attention, but the usual lethargy is gone. The bakers' faces are tense, their hands shake ever so slightly as they shape dough, aware of the absence that has left the city raw. Even the faint hum of the miller's cart outside sounds sharper, more insistent, cutting through the morning like a warning. Down the street, the milk vendors stand quietly by their carts. The amber glow of their remaining bottles seems weaker in the brightening day, like fading embers in a hearth. They watch passers-by with a mixture of relief and apprehension, knowing that for the first time in weeks, the city must face the morning without the habitual comfort that has long dulled its edges. Some hold the cups out, offering them to those who appear anxious, while others simply grip their stock, unsure whether to distribute what little remains. You pause near a group of dock workers on the corner, their broad shoulders tense under the morning chill. They speak in low voices, the usual confidence tempered by uncertainty. "It feels different," one says, rubbing a hand across his face, "like the city's awake for the first time in months." His companion nods, casting a glance toward the horizon, where the fog thins to reveal rooftops glistening with dew. You sense that this is a rare awareness, a city suddenly present in its own streets, every detail sharp and unblinking. The city itself seems to lean into the clear dawn, every shadow drawn taut, every sound crisp. Church bells ring with an unfamiliar resonance, bouncing off walls and through alleyways, startling the birds and rattling the windows. The usual rhythm of early morning has returned, but it is brittle, tentative. London is discovering the cost of its long indulgence. The streets are clear, the citizens alert, but a subtle fragility lingers beneath the surface, like ice forming too quickly over a river that has long run soft. And as you walk further, taking in the first clear dawn, you understand the truth in the sudden clarity. The city has awoken, yes, but it is learning what it has lost. The comfort that once dulled its pain, the warmth that once smoothed its edges, the sweetness that once carried it through restless nights, all are absent. For the first time in weeks, London feels the weight of its own nerves, the full measure of its own humanity, and the soft, pervasive haze of Poppy is gone, leaving behind the raw, sharp world of wakefulness. The city is awake, and London has never felt more fragile. The sky over Bishopsgate is bruised and pale, the fog retreating slowly to reveal rooftops slick with dew. You walk through the streets, boots pressing against cold stone, and smell at first the acrid, sharp bite of smoke curling through the morning air. Fires have been set. Crates, jars, bottles once filled with amber warmth now crackle in the flames, sending tiny sparks like restless fireflies into the chill. The city seems to hold its breath as the smoke rises, twisting into the pale sky, carrying with it the scent of both destruction and relief. You pause near a row of market stalls. The vendors stand back, faces drawn tight with the tension of watching what was once their livelihood consumed. Each bottle of milk that had held the sweet, soft promise of sleep and ease is now reduced to blackened shards, the residue curling into ash that drifts like dust in the wind. There is a strange hush here, heavier than usual, the kind that presses against your chest and makes each breath feel deliberate. People step carefully around embers that threaten to catch, their eyes bright with the reflection of flames and fear alike. A woman shoves a crate into the fire, her hands shaking slightly as she steps back. She watches the liquid inside vaporize, the milky amber disappearing in a hiss of heat and smoke. "It had to go," she mutters, voice trembling. "It was too much. For all of us." Her words are swallowed immediately by the roar of the fire, yet they linger in the fog, carried by the wind to others who understand without speaking. Children peek from behind closed doors, noses pressed to windows. Their eyes widen at the spectacle, a mix of awe and confusion. Mothers hold them close, whispering reassurance, but the tremor in their voices betrays their own apprehension. Even the men who patrol the streets, usually alert and disciplined, pause to watch, hands resting lightly on their carts or the railings, feeling the gravity of the moment pressing against their senses. The fires burn not just objects, but the ritual of the city's dependence, and everyone feels the weight of its absence before the smoke even reaches their lungs. You step closer to the largest blaze, where crates are stacked precariously, the wood hissing as it gives way to the heat. You feel the warmth on your face, the sharp smell of burning resin biting at your nostrils. Each bottle that shatters is a sigh, a small release of a pressure that has long held the city in a fogged embrace. The smoke rises, twisting into thick columns that blend with the morning mist, as if London itself is exhaling, letting go of weeks of quiet sedation. Across the street, a group of men sweep ash and embers into heaps, moving slowly but with purpose. The silence that follows is different from before, not soft, not sweet, but alert. The city seems to shiver in the sudden clarity, feeling its own nerves for the first time in months. People glance at one another, sensing the change, understanding without words that this cleansing is not just of objects, but of the city's very pulse. And as the last bottles collapse into fire, as the smoke rises high above rooftops and chimneys, you understand it. London breathes differently now. The haze that has dulled its streets, its hands, its minds, begins to lift. The comfort is gone, the sweetness extinguished, and the city stands raw and awake, fragile, and impossibly present to itself for the first time in too long. The streets of London stretch before you, wet and glistening with the remnants of frost and ash. After weeks of fog-softened steps and the hush of poppy-laced evenings, the city finally begins to move with purpose. The rhythm is hesitant at first, Boots echo sharply against the cobblestones, voices carry clearly across alleys, and the carts clatter with the familiar weight of goods. There is a tension in the air, a nervous energy that feels almost alive, vibrating beneath the surface of every street, every building. You walk through Bishopsgate, noticing the subtle transformations everywhere. Windows that once glowed with the amber haze of sedated warmth now reveal people stirring deliberately, mothers tending to children who no longer drift in endless drowsiness, shopkeepers arranging their wares with focused care, clerks straightening stacks of letters and ledgers. The city exhales with each step, as though learning how to breathe again after months of softened fog and muted life. In a parlour above the street, a mother leans over her child's cradle, hands steady for the first time in weeks. The baby stirs, eyes blinking, reaching for her fingers with small, curious movements. She smiles faintly, lips trembling, realizing that the city's quiet that once comforted them had also dulled them to their own lives. The cup of milk that once carried the faint swirl of poppy resin sits untouched on the table beside her. She touches it briefly, then sets it aside, the gesture deliberate and heavy with intent. Down the street, in the bakery, the ovens burn brightly. The staff moves with a new awareness, handling dough and trays, as though waking from a long, dream-filled slumber. The aroma of fresh bread rises into the crisp air, sharper and more tangible than before. Patrons gather outside, children skipping past without the hazy lethargy that had slowed their steps, merchants calling greetings with voices full and unsoftened. London hums again, but this time with tension and alertness, with the sharp edge of presence that the poppy had long dulled. Even in the darker alleys, the shift is tangible. Sweepers carry brooms with firm strokes, their shoulders squared, eyes bright and watchful. Dockworkers adjust crates and ropes with practiced precision, every motion purposeful. The city has reclaimed its energy, its nerves, its pulse, but the streets are not entirely peaceful. Anxiety lingers where the habit once softened the mind. People glance over their shoulders, cautious yet determined, aware that they have been woken suddenly and must navigate the streets with newly restored clarity. You pause atop Ludgate Hill, looking down over the awakening city. The smoke of the cleansing fires has dissipated, leaving a clarity that catches the edges of buildings, streets, and alleys. London's heartbeat is uneven but strong, rising and falling like a cautious tide. The city has learned to stand again, but it carries the memory of weeks, softened by sweetness, a reminder of how fragile calm can be and how sudden clarity can strike. And as you descend toward the market, boots echoing against the stones, you understand. London has woken, not perfectly, not without tremor, but awake, alert, and unsoftened for the first time in too long. The cup sits on the side table, half full, abandoned, its surface still rippling faintly from the last sip. You pause beside it, noticing the thin swirl of amber lingering at the bottom, a delicate trace of warmth and sweetness that feels almost alive. It has been weeks since the city leaned so heavily on these small vessels, weeks since mornings and evenings were measured in the quiet pull of resin, in the soft ease that carried London through restless nights. Now, as you watch it, the cup seems to hold memory itself captured, concentrated, and impossible to ignore. Inside the room, the occupants are stirring. Mothers lift their heads, blinking with a clarity that feels almost harsh after weeks of sedation. Children shift beneath covers, stretching limbs and yawning wide, their small lungs filling with the sharp, cool air that has returned to the nursery. The city's warmth has not vanished entirely. The memory of comfort clings faintly to each surface, to the lingering scent of milk and the subtle, earthy trace of poppy that drifts in the quiet corners. But it is lighter now, a shadow of the habit rather than its substance. You step closer to the window, drawing back the curtains to let the pale sunlight fall across the wooden floorboards. Dust dances in the golden slant of light, catching and holding the traces of previous days, the small, secret indulgences that softened nerves, quieted fears, and blurred the edges of life into calm, easy lines. The memory of it is here still, in the warmth of the cup, in the quiet hum of the street beyond, in the slow, careful movements of those who have learned to move again without the crutch they once relied upon. A woman reaches for the cup instinctively, fingers brushing the rim. Her hands hesitate, and she pauses, catching the thin amber swirl in the light. She inhales, small and tentative, and a faint smile touches her lips. Not the soft, hazy smile of sedation, but one born from remembrance. She knows what it felt like. She remembers the calm it carried, and yet she also knows the price. The soft drift into forgetfulness, the subtle surrender of hours and moments she can never reclaim. Outside, the city stretches and bends under the morning sun. Cobbled streets glisten with dew, chimneys release faint plumes of smoke, and pedestrians move with careful attention to the details of their steps. The world hums again, sharper, clearer, almost too bright after the dulled weeks. You notice small things, the crisp click of a boot against stone, the ripple of a cartwheel over uneven cobbles, the distant call of a street vendor. Everything is sharper now, edged with a presence that had been softened before. You lift the cup, turning it gently in your hands. It is warm, faintly fragrant, a remnant of comfort that now serves only as a memory. The city itself has learned to move without it, to rise again from the haze of dependency, to reclaim its pulse and its rhythm. Yet the memory remains, as persistent as fog in the morning, a quiet echo of the sweetness that carried so many through restless nights. And as you set the cup back down, you realize the truth. The city has awoken, but the memory in the cup will never fade. It will linger in every home, every street, every heart that once surrendered to its gentle pull, a reminder of the nights when London drank to forget, and the mornings when it learned to remember again. The streets of London stretch ahead in the pale light of morning, wet from last night's mist and softened by the dawn that creeps over rooftops. You walk along the narrow lanes of Bishopsgate, boots pressing against cobblestones still slick with dew. There is a subtle tension in the air, a vibration that seems to emanate from the city itself, as though it is learning to move again after long weeks of lethargy. The fog has lifted slightly, revealing rooftops glistening with moisture, chimneys puffing thin ribbons of smoke into the pale sky. Shop doors begin to open, and with them, the faint creak of hinges, the shuffle of merchants arranging wares. Their movements are deliberate, cautious, as if they are testing the rhythms of a city that has learned to sleep too deeply. You notice the subtle differences, the grocer straightening boxes with measured precision, the baker adjusting trays of loaves with attention that was dulled for weeks, and the blacksmith at his forge, hammering lightly at first, then gradually with the force of someone reacquainted with the world. Children appear next, cautiously at first, peeking from behind shutters, fingers gripping curtains. They take tentative steps into the streets, blinking rapidly as if adjusting to a light they haven't known in months. Mothers call softly, guiding them, eyes wide and alert. For the first time in weeks, their movements are not blurred by the haze of poppy-laced milk. Their minds are awake, their bodies fully present. The contrast between the quieted weeks and this tentative awakening strikes you like a shock, sharp and almost painful in its clarity. You pass a tavern where the morning rituals have changed. The usual lethargic men who once swayed in drowsy rows now move with cautious energy. Cups of warm milk are set aside, left untouched, while chairs are straightened and tools are cleaned with care. Conversations rise and fall in brisk, clear tones, voices carrying through the fogged streets with a sharpness that was missing before. The air feels alive again, charged with the quiet tension of a city learning to reclaim its own rhythm. Even in the alleys, the effect is evident. Sweepers push brooms with deliberate strokes, back straight, eyes alert to every crack in the cobblestones. Dockworkers and laborers move with newfound precision, adjusting crates, tying ropes, and managing wagons with the awareness of men who have been softened too long and now must relearn their own strength. The city itself seems to adjust to their movements, streets responding to the new energy with echoes of sound that had been dulled for too long. You pause atop a small rise, looking down the main thoroughfare. London stretches before you, alive in a way that feels fragile and tentative, yet undeniably present. The buildings glimmer faintly under the pale light. The streets hum softly with returning motion, and the citizens, careful, aware, alert, navigate their reclaimed city with cautious grace. The problem's fiber, awakening is subtle, gradual, and incomplete. The memory of the softened weeks still lingers in empty bottles, abandoned cups, and the quiet corners of homes and parlors. Yet the streets themselves are beginning to breathe again, learning to carry the city forward, one step at a time, after a long surrender to sleep, sweetness, and forgetfulness. The fires crackle along the edges of Bishopsgate, bright against the pale morning fog. You walk among them, boots heavy against the wet cobblestones, the heat washing over your face with a sharp intensity that contrasts with the lingering chill. Wooden crates, once holding bottles of amber milk, now collapse in flames, the liquid inside hissing and evaporating in wisps of sweet, pungent smoke. The scent rises into the streets, curling around the corners, mixing with the dampness and carrying a memory of what was lost. People gather along the sidewalks, watching in a mixture of awe and anxiety. Mothers clutch their children closer, hands trembling, eyes wide. Fathers and laborers stand at the edges, arms crossed, faces lined with worry. The city's heartbeat, dulled for weeks by warm sips and slow breaths, pulses once more, uneven, sharp, alive. Each bottle igniting releases not just the resin, but the collective surrender that has softened the streets for too long. Sparks rise and scatter like fireflies into the fog, landing briefly on rooftops, then vanishing into the pale sky. Inside the alleys, the sweepers and errand boys watch with cautious fascination. They had grown accustomed to soft steps and slower rhythms, the hushed movements that defined life during the weeks of indulgence. Now, they stand alert, the flickering light of the fires illuminating faces sharpened with attention. Even the animals, cats and stray dogs, move carefully around the edges of the blaze, unsettled by the intensity, yet aware that change has returned to the city. You approach one of the larger fires, where crates have been stacked high. The amber liquid inside hisses violently, sending up ribbons of smoke that carry a sweetness that almost masks the acrid bite of burning wood. You notice the intensity of the flames. They consume quickly, swallowing the container's whole. Each bottle that disappears represents a small awakening, the loss of ease, the removal of comfort, the return of sharp edges to minds that have been softened too long. People watch quietly, knowing the ritual is necessary, yet feeling the weight of absence settle on them. A man bends forward to lift a bottle too close to the edge. The wood cracks under the heat, sending sparks against his sleeve. He flinches instinctively, a reaction that would have been dulled before. Around him, others take note, adjusting their distance, their posture, their awareness. The city itself seems to hold its breath as the fires eat away at the instruments of sedation, burning the haze that has long softened their world. As you step back, the streets glow with reflected heat and light, pale against the awakening fog. The air is thick with memory, thick with loss, thick with the reminder that the city is standing on the edge of change. London is learning to move again, to breathe with clarity, to face its streets without the cushion of softened nerves. And as the smoke curls higher, disappearing into the pale sky, you realize that the fires are not just consuming bottles. They are igniting the first moments of a city reborn, uneasy and alert, fragile and alive. The morning air hangs heavy over Bishopsgate, thick with the aftermath of last night's fires. Smoke drifts lazily along the streets, curling around chimneys, pooling in narrow alleys, carrying the faint, lingering sweetness of poppy-laced milk that has long defined the city's rhythm. You step onto the cobblestones, boots pressing into the damp, and immediately feel the tension in the air, the subtle charge of a city holding itself still, learning how to breathe again after weeks of softened, dulled movement. Windows are open along the streets, shutters thrown back, revealing faces strained with attention. Mothers lean from ledges, scanning the empty sidewalks for signs of children, who now run and play with hesitant energy, unsoftened and alert. Shopkeepers open doors and arrange wares with a careful precision, measuring every movement as though relearning how to inhabit their own lives. The soft haze that had long dulled perception is gone, replaced with clarity so stark it feels almost unbearable. You pause near a bakery where the scent of charred crates still clings to the doorway. The staff works carefully, each movement deliberate, each loaf handled with renewed care. The ovens glow warmly, the crackle of flames sharper and more alive than it has been in weeks. Patrons begin to gather outside, whispering among themselves, exchanging glances that carry the weight of nights spent in sedation. Children peek over shoulders, eyes wide, voices uncertain. Even the animals on the street seem attuned to the new rhythm, moving cautiously, listening, adjusting to the pulse of the city. In the alleyways, sweepers push brooms with deliberate, firm strokes, observing the edges of the street and the motion of people with sharpened awareness. Dockworkers and laborers unload wagons and carry crates with a precision that had been dulled before. Their movements echo in the narrow corridors of buildings, bouncing against walls in patterns that ripple through the streets like a nervous heartbeat. The city, once softened and subdued, now trembles with the awareness of itself. You continue down Ludgate Hill, watching the sun lift slowly above the rooftops, pale and hesitant. The fog thins, revealing the contours of buildings, windows, and streets with startling clarity. Bells ring from distant churches, their tones slicing through the morning with a resonance that shakes the city awake. Voices rise above the hum of daily motion, brisk, sharp, alive. The gentle sedation of poppy milk, the quiet haze that once enveloped the streets, has dissipated. Even in the quiet corners, in rooms that once held lethargic mothers and drifting children, the city is present. People move deliberately, aware of their own steps and the rhythm of life around them. The weight of weeks spent softened has left an imprint, but now the streets carry tension, alertness, and the fragile awareness of the life they have reclaimed. London holds its breath in the lingering warmth of the morning, poised between the memory of what it once needed and the clarity of what it now possesses. And as you walk among its awakened streets, the realization settles deep within you. The city has learned to stand on its own again, cautious, alert, and impossibly alive. The street is bathed in pale sunlight that cuts through the lingering fog, illuminating the shutters and doors along Church Row. You walk slowly, boots pressing against damp cobblestones, noticing the figures gathered outside the small parish church. Mothers cluster near the steps, their arms wrapped protectively around children, cups held loosely in hands that tremble slightly with the memory of weeks spent softened by warmth and resin. The morning is alive now, alert, but carries the residue of sedation in the slight swaying of bodies and the heavy-lidded glances exchanged between neighbors. The first mother you pass lifts her child, swaddled tightly against her chest. The infant blinks against the light, yawning with a clarity that had been absent for weeks. The mother sips from a cup, but this time pauses, holding it at chest height, as though testing the liquid against the sharp air of the street. The amber swirl inside glints faintly, a remnant of warmth and sweetness, but she does not drink further. Instead, she sets it carefully aside, fingertips brushing the porcelain lightly, hesitant, aware that the city has learned to wake without it. Across the street, another mother crouches to adjust her child's cloak. She glances up at the congregation, filing into the church for morning prayers. Her eyes are sharp, alert, scanning for dangers she would have ignored during the weeks of sedation. She straightens slowly, hands smoothing the folds of fabric with deliberate care. There is a tension in her posture, a subtle reminder of the nerves that have been stilled too long and are now reawakening. Each movement carries a quiet weight, the kind that comes when one must relearn to inhabit one's own body and surroundings. You continue down the row, noting small details everywhere. A child skips lightly, cautious but present, not drifting like a shadow in the fog of amber milk. A street sweeper moves past, broom held firmly, eyes sharp and unyielding. Even the stray cats and dogs seem aware of the shift, their movements precise, deliberate, attuned to the edges of sound and shadow that had long been softened by the city's haze. The city itself is adjusting, learning again how to pulse, how to breathe with tension and clarity, rather than lull into gentle oblivion. On the steps of the church, a group of women converse softly. Their tones are measured, careful, aware that the city has begun to reclaim itself. The cups, once essential for quieting nerves and softening lives, sit on the ledges, untouched, but present a reminder of weeks of reliance and the ease that has vanished overnight. They glance toward the fog that lingers over rooftops, inhaling sharply, as if tasting the crispness of a world restored to wakefulness. The bells toll for morning service, clear and resonant, ringing through the awakening streets. Mothers gather their children, footsteps brisk, alert, deliberate. The city has learned again to move on its own, aware of its streets, its alleys, its watchful eyes. And as you walk past the final houses, noticing each mother's steady hands and the children's attentive eyes, you understand. London is no longer softened by warmth and resin. It has learned to stand again, cautious, alive, and infinitely aware of the life it carries forward. The streets of Bishopsgate are quiet in the first pale light of morning, the fog lifting just enough to reveal slick cobblestones glinting with dew. You follow the familiar path of the milkman, whose cart moves with deliberate care, each wheel clicking softly against stone. The warm, amber glow of the remaining bottles catches the weak sunlight, faintly reflecting across the wet streets. For weeks, he has carried the city's secret in these vessels, a subtle lifeline for mothers, children, and weary workers alike. But today, the mood in his steps is different, a tension that betrays the knowledge that this delivery may be his last. He moves slowly from street to street, pausing at familiar doorways. Hands reach automatically, clutching coins or small scraps of paper, and he places a bottle gently in each palm. There is a rhythm to his work, but it is slower now, cautious, as though every step could unravel the fragile balance of the city's dependence. He avoids eye contact, knowing that to meet it directly would betray the truth he carries. The supply is almost gone, the stores burned, the sweet calm the city relied on reduced to smoke and memory. You follow him silently, noticing the subtle details along the route. A mother kneels to lift a child from a doorstep, both blinking against the rising light, eyes wide with alertness that had been absent for weeks. The cup he leaves warms her hands, but she hesitates before drinking, aware now of the power that resides in each drop. Children step lightly beside their parents, careful and attentive, faces full of wonder and nerves newly awakened. The city breathes differently today, each step measured, each movement deliberate, a collective learning of presence after months of sedation. At the bakery corner, the milkman pauses, his cart leans slightly under his weight, the horse stamping impatiently against the stone. He glances down at the few remaining bottles, amber swirls fading in the morning light. A baker reaches to take one, but hesitates, noticing the strain in the man's eyes. The milkman speaks softly, voice low and almost confessional. "This is the last of it. Make it last." His words hang in the air, heavy and absolute. Those who receive the bottles understand the gravity they are witnessing, the final act of a ritual that has defined the city for weeks. He continues along the street, delivering each bottle with care. The fog thins further, revealing rooftops and chimneys, and the city stirs, alive with alertness. The streets hum with movement, steps, voices, the clang of carts restoring the rhythm that had been dulled. But the milkman carries with him a weight, knowing that the calm he has provided, the softening of nerves and hearts, has ended. By the time he returns to the empty depot, the streets are awake, the city alert and unsoftened for the first time in months. The bottles are gone, the warmth is gone, only the memory remains, lingering faintly in alleys, parlours, and doorways. London stands in the pale morning, alive and nervous, and the milkman, weary, leans against the cart. Knowing he has delivered more than milk, he has delivered the city's first steps toward wakefulness. The streets of London are alive with sound for the first time in weeks, but it is not the clamour that once defined Bishopsgate. Voices carry differently, now clear, tense, and uncertain. Footsteps echo sharply against the wet cobblestones, each step measured, deliberate, attuned to the world they had long ignored. Windows reveal movement behind shutters, mothers stirring, children leaning over sills to glimpse the waking city. The faint scent of smoke still drifts from yesterday's fires, mixing with coal and dew, carrying a memory of softened nights and stolen calm. You walk through the market square, noticing how the traders move with careful precision. The usual hum of hazy mornings is replaced with alertness, each merchant aware of the sounds around them, each gesture deliberate, and present. A fruit seller arranges baskets with exacting care, noticing a child dart past and adjusting without breaking rhythm. Even the carts moving along the street seem sharper, rolling with the weight of full alertness rather than drifted lethargy. In the alleyways, the sweepers glide over stones with a new firmness in their steps. Brushes strike the cobbles with clear sound, scraping away dirt and residue, but also the faint echo of weeks of sedation. Dock workers carry crates with awareness in their shoulders, backs straight, eyes bright, alert to the rhythm of the city, the creak of wheels, the shuffle of steps that once might have been dulled by the comfort of warm milk and poppy. Every motion resonates with life newly reclaimed. At the corner of Ludgate Hill, mothers gather children to their sides, holding hands with a firmness born of both caution and renewed attention. They move briskly now, voices low but commanding, teaching their children to navigate streets that had softened under weeks of quiet indulgence. Children listen, their faces wide with awareness, stepping carefully but confidently, learning the edges of the city that had once been smoothed out by warmth and sedation. You pause near a tavern where a group of men once drifted through their mornings with half-lidded eyes. Now, their movements are crisp, gestures deliberate. They carry cups untouched, their conversations sharper, full of awareness and caution. The city hums around them, responding to the alert energy. Even stray animals adjust their movement, ears high, bodies taut, moving through the streets with a cautious grace they had long abandoned. The gas lamps are still lit along the streets, but their glow seems secondary to the awakening of the city itself. The fog curls along the walls and around doorways, but it no longer muffles sound or softens movement. London breathes differently now, aware of itself, alert to the weight of its own streets, its own people. The memory of softened nerves and warm, amber-hued milk lingers faintly, like the last whisper of a dream, but the city has begun to reclaim its pulse. You step forward, boots pressing firmly against the cobblestones, and realize that London is learning to speak again, not in shouts or clamour, but in measured whispers that carry awareness, tension, and life through every street, every alley, every doorway. The city is awake, it is present, and it will remember, even after the memory of sweetness fades. The morning stretches slowly over Bishopsgate, pale light brushing rooftops and street corners with the first clarity of day. You walk among the alleys and markets, noticing how London moves differently now. The streets hum with a cautious energy, footsteps deliberate, voices carrying clearly through the fog that has begun to lift. Windows reveal activity, mothers attending children with sharp attention, merchants arranging wares with precision, workers adjusting to the city's rhythm after weeks of dulled movement. Yet despite the alertness, There remains an echo of what has been lost, a lingering sweetness that clings faintly to the air, a memory of calm and sedation that once softened every corner. In a small parlour, a mother sets a cup of amber-hued milk on the side table. She lingers over it, fingers tracing the rim as though feeling for the warmth that is no longer needed. Her child sits upright on a chair beside her, eyes bright and clear, hands gripping the edge of the seat with careful intent. The mother inhales gently, tasting the faint residue of the milk that once carried more than sustenance. It carried the quiet, gentle sedation of nights softened by poppy resin. Now she breathes it in, not as relief, but as memory, as a reminder of what the city once relied upon. You pass the market square, where vendors have returned to their tasks with renewed focus. Crates are stacked with attention, fruit arranged with precision, and coins exchanged with deliberate care. The hum of activity is sharp, alert, alive. Yet under it all there lingers a trace of the sweetness that once softened their days. It drifts faintly from empty cups, from shelves recently cleared of the amber liquid, from the memories etched into every hand that once held it. Along the narrow alleys, sweepers move with intent, brushing cobblestones clean of debris, but the ghost of their previous lethargy lingers in the rhythm of their steps. Dockworkers carry crates and ropes with awareness, careful to balance weight and attention in ways they had not needed for weeks. Even the stray animals move with cautious grace, responding to the subtle shift in the city's pulse. The memory of softened nights presses against the edges of the present, a reminder that calm had once been purchased, not earned. You pause atop a small rise overlooking the city. Sunlight glints across rooftops, the river reflects faint streaks of pale gold, and the streets stretch outward, alert and alive. London carries both memory and awakening, alert to the pulse of its own people, yet remembering the ease it had known when warmth and resin ruled the quiet hours. The sweetness is gone, but its ghost lingers in corners, on tables, in the brief hesitations of those who walk through the streets awake for the first time in weeks. And as you descend toward the thoroughfares, the realization settles over you with quiet weight. London has awakened, and its streets now hold the clarity of presence. Yet the memory of what it once craved, the warmth, the amber swirl, the gentle sedation remains imprinted on the city, a soft echo that will linger long after the cups are empty and the fog has fully lifted. The final morning stretches over London like a pale promise, light creeping slowly through the fog that still clings stubbornly to the rooftops and alleys. You move through Bishopsgate, noticing how the city breathes differently now. Every street carries the subtle tension of alertness, footsteps echoing sharply against cobblestones, voices rising clearly through alleys that had been muffled for weeks. The memory of warmth and amber-hued milk lingers faintly in the air, but the city's pulse is no longer softened, no longer subdued by the gentle sedation that has ruled so long. You arrive at the milkman's empty cart. It sits crooked against the curb, wheels still warm from the last journey, but all the bottles are gone. The amber liquid that once carried comfort, calm, and quiet surrender has been consumed, scattered, or destroyed. You reach toward the cart, brushing your fingers over the smooth wood, feeling the residual warmth as if it clings to the grain itself. There is a silence here now, thick and weighty, filled not with ease but with awareness, the city standing alert for the first time in weeks. In the alley nearby, mothers gather children close, holding hands tightly, teaching them to navigate the streets with careful attention. Children move lightly but deliberately, eyes bright, small bodies unsoftened by the haze that once carried them through endless, quiet hours. The city hums around them, crisp and tense, every movement precise, every sound carried sharply. The absence of the last cup leaves a new rhythm in its wake, a rhythm of alertness, vigilance, and fragile energy. You pass the boarding houses and parlors, observing the familiar scenes now altered. Mothers sit upright, hands steady, eyes watchful. Children stir in beds with abrupt movements, rising from slumber fully present. Men and women move through kitchens and workshops, with a careful deliberation, adjusting to the clarity that now governs every step. The faint scent of sweetness lingers residual, ghostly, but it carries only memory now. It does not soften, does not lull, does not obscure the edges of the city's renewed awareness. On Ludgate Hill, the sweepers push brooms with crisp precision, their arms swinging deliberately, heads lifted, eyes scanning every inch of the street. Dockworkers lift crates with alert muscles, careful of every weight, every balance, every potential misstep. Even stray animals move through the alleys and thoroughfares with measured steps, attuned to the newly sharpened rhythm that governs a city awake for the first time in months. You pause at a small rise, looking over the streets. The sunlight reflects off rooftops, glistens on cobblestones, illuminates windows and doors. London stands before you, fragile and present, alert and aware, carrying both memory and awakening. The last cup is gone. The calm it offered has evaporated into the morning air, leaving the city raw, attentive, and alive. And as you descend toward the heart of Bishopsgate, the truth settles quietly over you. London has woken. It carries the weight of its own pulse, its own streets, and its own people. The last cup is empty, but the city's awareness is full, holding itself together, cautious, alive, and impossibly present for what comes next.